Don't any of you have the guts to play for blood?
I'm your huckleberry. That's just my game.
What's up, everybody? Derek Lambert, Neil Gnostic Informant. What's going on?
What's going on?
Huh?
I'm just excited to talk to Dr. Gad Barnea and get some the scoop on the latest in the archaeology over there in that world, right on the scene, right in that part of the world. You can't get it. We're getting it right from the source. I mean,
not only the source, like Gad, you're going in and you're grading the scholars who've been around for a while and checking some of their stuff out and going, no, we got to read this ourselves. We're sorry, they're making mistakes and we need to reevaluate this. So I figured, look, I contacted you last minute notice yesterday, said, man, I came across your article on who is Israel. What is Israel? And I wanted to, plugging your book here, Yahwism under how do you pronounce this? I always mess this up.
Achaemenid. That's the way I pronounce it, at least.
Achaemenid, that's how I say it, yeah.
Achaemenid Empire. The book is free. You can go right now, download it for free. We're going to be talking about a few articles he has, like who is Israel, kind of the development of that, and getting into Samaritanism. And I'll be interested to hear your take because I just crafted a script wondering, were the Samaritans in Grassroots in the 5th century during the Persian period, while Elephantine, we have evidence of polytheism, was there polytheistic or was it universally polytheistic at the same time up here in Grassroots? And so hopefully we can tackle that question as you unravel who Israel is and then get into Khnum and his attack upon Yah, or the people of Yah in Elephantine. And I like to put it as like the gods are battling, because oftentimes there's a political tension between groups or factions, and it's Yah versus Khnum. And I'd love to hear your take. So if you don't mind, let's show you.
Do you have headphones by any chance?
Me?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a noise going on. I think it might be because if Gad doesn't have headphones and you don't have headphones, then you're both talking through your computers. Okay.
Is this better?
Yeah, I don't have, so I probably should.
So this will fix that. That.
Okay, fantastic. Okay,
cool. There's
one comment, Derek. One comment, Derek, on what you said. I mean, I'm not fixing, per se what my predecessors have done. I mean, in a sense, I am, but it's only because today we have better technology, and so I'm able to use really high-resolution images, and even a microscope to a really good electronic microscope to go and get some infrared imaging and things like that. That allows us to read some of the detail better. So it's not, my predecessors were really brilliant people, and kudos to them. I just am a beneficiary of the technology that comes with the territory of being in the 21st century.
Absolutely. So let's shamelessly plug real quick here, if you don't mind. I'd like to pop up. Oh, me and Neil are both fighting.
I thought I was going to do it for you. You got it.
Khnum versus Yah right now. Khnum is fighting to struggle over who gets to share what on the live stream. It's all good. So this article on Academia, go to his Academia webpage and be sure to go download for free the article we're going to cover today. And here is the Academia. It is in the description of the YouTube channel. We're going to be touching on this one here. This one here.
Maybe a small comment on this. So this is basically just the slide deck from my presentation, my paper yesterday that I presented in Berlin. I was supposed to be physically in Berlin, but I couldn't for personal reasons. But so I just presented via Zoom. But this is the paper that I presented at the conference in Berlin yesterday. It's not the article. The article behind this is actually going to come out in a couple of months as an actual article. in the journal of the American Oriental Society. So that would be an actual academic article.
Sounds good. I'm interested in, and then the birth and evolution of early Samaritan identity between the Persian and Ptolemaic empires. Be sure to subscribe to Gnostic Informant if you're at Myth Vision, and vice versa. If you're over at Gnostic Informant, subscribe to Myth Vision. It's the only way to get true gnosis and salvation. So, anywho, coming to you, Gad. Neil, how do we want to start this? You want to answer the question, who is Israel? Do we want to tackle that, or did you have any questions?
Yeah,
before?
I mean, where's the identity of Israel coming from? Basically, I would start with that, and what's the progression look like? When do we get a kingdom? All the stuff in the archaeology. Is there 12 tribes? Is the allotment of the 12 tribe map? Is that a true thing? That type of stuff. Is that we can start with that?
Well, these are all very big questions, so we'll address them one by one, I guess, if we have enough time.
Yeah,
it's a lot. It's a lot to unpack here. So I'd say the first thing about Israel as a name. I mean, it sounds to us today, a very kind of, it's obviously a household name. The first record of this name is in the Merneptah stele from about 1208 before the current era. So that's from Merneptah, and who was the son of Ramses II, Ramses the Great, and had a campaign in the Levant, and he noted a people group, an actual people group called Israel. In the 9th or 8th century before the current era, we have two stela in Canaanite stela, basically the Tel Dan stela and the Marisha stela, and these two stela mention Israel, but they mention Israel as what is probably a geographic location rather than a people group. Okay, so if we're looking at a people group in the Merneptah stela, it's clearly a people group. There's the identifier in many ancient languages have a kind of an identifier that shows what the meaning of a name is next to the actual name, and so it has the identifier of a people group in Egyptian. So we know that it is a people group, not a geographic location. In the Canaanite inscriptions, it's if you analyze the parallelism that is done there, it looks more like a location, a geographic location, even though we can't be 100% sure if it's really a people group or a geographic location. In cases where it is from the 8th century, for example, in the Neo-Assyrian sources where Israel is mentioned, is Sarila. It's not Israel, but it's mentioned as Sarila, so the name is mentioned with a certain inversion there. When it's mentioned there, it's mentioned as Kur, so the land of Sarila. So it's mentioned clearly as a land, not as a people group. The people group is mentioned as Bet Chomri, or the house of Omri, the king Omri, or the Omrites, who's also mentioned in the Bible. But the people group is not called Israel, ever at that point. At least it's not documented during that period. In an unambiguous way. Again, you can go and say that some parts of the Mesha stele, excuse me, I said earlier Marisha, that's obviously not true. The Mesha stele, parts of it might be the people group. My analysis, based on parallelism, is that this is more of a geographic location in the Tel Dan and the Mesha stele. In contrast, for example, the Arameans, the Aramean people group, is defined as a group of people, Lu Arami. So it means Lu from Awilum, for the man of Aram. And so there was a very clear way in the Assyrian records to distinguish between a people group and a geographic location. So long story short, this means that there is no unambiguous record of Israel being a people group after Merneptah. So Merneptah, clearly they are a people group. There is a people group called Israel. But then it's more of a land Sarila than a people group called Israel at that point. Of course, Sarila is we can understand how it's related to Israel. It's an inversion, but it's a very understandable corruption of the name. But so it's clearly there. A memory of this name still clearly persists during that time. And then
what time is this again? Just so
we're talking about 8th century at that point. 8th century is the last record we currently know of with Sarila that is mentioned. After that point, we only have Bet Omri, so Bet Chomri. And please note in the Bible it's Omri with an ayin, the sound, and in the Assyrian records it's Chomri with a ch sound. This ayin chet interchange is going to play a role later on in our discussion.
Okay.
But so we have that in the Neo-Assyrian records, which is obviously very very important. It's really the only actual official records that we have from that time period. This is not an administrative entity. This is basically just a designation of a land. Kings like Ahab, for example, who is noted in the Neo-Assyrian record, are called Ahab Kur Sarila, so Ahab of the land of Israel, not of the people, but of the land. And again, Bet Chomri or Bet Omri are is the people or the palace or the dynasty, but that's basically the when people are referenced, that's the way they are referenced. Then the designation Israel disappears for a very long time, for about 500 years from that point on. Okay.
This, if I may, just let me chime in for 1 second here, Gad and Neil, to give a shout out. First of all, I know I don't want to get off topic, but this is an important point, that distance, that gap. Why are they not using this term in the record? But first of all, shout out to Daniel Kyle, for both you hooking up Myth Vision and for hooking up Gnostic Informant with 5 gifted memberships.
Wow.
5
Thank
lucky
you.
souls have been saved, and 5 lucky souls get Gnosis. So, and then there's American Culture in the chat with the new membership. So again,
Appreciate
thank you
that.
for helping us out. Yeah. So if I may, Gad, if I'm throwing you off, say shut up, Derek.
That's
Let's
fine,
keep
that's fine.
going. Feel
I'm
free
happy
to,
for you guys. It's fine.
well, I just want to say shut up to me if I'm derailing, because you're going to get to this. But this is why me and Neil were like, what if these guys later are looking back at the records? They have access and see the antiquity, like Plato talks about, and say, you know what, that name that appears over here in the Mernaptah Stele in ancient sources, we're going to tie ourselves in a fictive way back here. I don't know. Anyway, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself.
We'll come to that. Yeah, we'll come to that. And then the question, in the title of this talk today is who is Israel? And we're going to see. We'll get there, but we're going to see that there was a lot of, and we still don't have a complete answers to this. But both Judeans and Samarians identified it to some degree as Israel, and that's an open question in many ways. I have a proposal again, not a final final thesis on this, but just a proposal. Right now, it's still a work in progress. It's a very, very complex subject.
Before you resume with what you were saying, I just have one question on the Mernaptah Stele.
Okay.
And the Mernaptah is pretty ancient. What, 13th century BC, right? Something like that.
Yes. Yep.
And that's the first time anyone known as Israel's ever mentioned. Now,
correct.
From you showed me, because when I read this for the first time, I was looking at the translation, and it was like Issyria, and I was like, that's weird. It doesn't even say Israel. But then you pointed out to me that the hieroglyphics has to fit that way. But I wanted to get your thoughts on, there's a couple people, there's like 5 different scholars that I was reading through who said that Jezreel and Israel would actually look the same in those hieroglyphs. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's a people group, right? So Jezreel would be a valley. In the way it's usually it's a location, and this is here. It's a people group. They probably would look the same. But
is it possible
again,
that Israel and Jezreel are the same place? They're just different. One of because the way you say Jezreel in Hebrew is Yitzrael, Yitzrael, but not Yisrael. It almost looks like the same name.
Yeah, it sounds, especially in English, it sounds similar, but it's really the meaning of Israel is El will, the deity El would seed from Zerah, from Zerah, and Israel is something different. So there is a very substantial difference between Israel and Israel, even though they sound very similar in English. So I don't think they are the same. They might. I mean, it's the same area where Israel,
right? Same exact place.
Yeah. It's exactly the same north place, but that does not mean that they're related. Mm-hmm. They might simply be the same in the same place. We don't have any reason to believe that they are directly related. They might have been, folk etymology. I always go back to folk etymology when studying, or at least when considering options for antiquity, because folk etymology played a major role in the daily lives of people in antiquity. Okay?
But wouldn't that mean that there's a possibility that Yisrael could be Yitzrael and Yisrael, Jezreel and Israel could be kind of the same name going into different folk etymologies?
Yeah, I don't think that, because again, the Israel is the Israel with a Z, right, with a Zayin.
Yeah,
comes from the idea of planting or seeding.
But then you got Zion and Sinai.
I mean, it's the most fertile valley in the area.
You also have Zion and Sinai. You get the Z and the S there. Why not over here?
Yeah, this is where I feel this is a little bit too speculative for me.
Yeah. Okay.
To go that far. I don't see any reason to connect the two. Actually connect them. There might have been a folk etymology even in antiquity that did connect them. People tend to look just like you did now. People did also, 2,500 and 3,000 years ago. They looked for connections between names, and so folk etymology is a huge force in antiquity, and needs to be always taken into account. And we will come back to folk etymology as well, I believe, later on. But yeah, so Meneptah Stele, I think it's really pretty clear that that it refers to a people group that identifies with the name Israel. Now they're not Yahwists. Notice that, right? They are El. Their deity is El, or at least the deity that they identified with, or the theophoric element in their ethnonym, their ethnic name, is El. So they're not Yahwists.
The Canaanite god.
The Canaanite god, exactly. So they're not Yahwists, or at least they're not identified as Yahwists. But of course, that name persists, and it persists well into the Hellenistic period as an identifier for the Yahwists. Okay, which is interesting. So they identify as that, but as you mentioned, and we'll come back to this, but as you mentioned, in the later periods, it's an archaizing tendency that they are trying to adopt. So they are trying to archaize their origin stories, right? So that's why the Israel is suddenly becomes so popular, and we'll talk about another important element that becomes very popular later on. Now, we talked about the 8th century. We went from Meneptah, end of the 13th century before the current era, and then 9th century with the Tel Dan and the Mesha Stele, 9th century, 8th century, and the Neo-Assyrian records going into the 7th century now with Sarila and things like that. And Samaria is mentioned as a city as well in these records. Now moving to the end of the 7th century, a very interesting phenomenon happens. So end of the 7th century and into the 6th century, and I have an article about that, where I analyzed the historical record. I analyzed the actual, the primary records themselves from Samaria and from Judea. End of 7th century, early 6th century. Now, before the end of the 7th century, in the north, so in Samaria, or Israel if you want, So I should obviously say that in case that needs further clarification, that either Shalmaneser the fifth or Sargon the second exiled the Samarians or Israel or the Northern Kingdom in 722 before the current era. According to the biblical record, that was Shalmaneser. According to the Neo-Assyrian record, that was Sargon II.
And real quick comment on that is,
sure,
were they called? They were House of Omri at the time, right? Or at least descendants
correct.
of it.
Correct.
So they weren't called the House of Israel outside the Bible, but within
That's
the
right.
Bible, they keep calling it Israel.
They're never called House of Israel anywhere outside the Bible.
Got it.
Yeah. And so 722-ish, we have the exile of, and it was in, the reason I say ish is it was clearly in waves. It wasn't just a one-time event. It was a kind of a long-term, not very long, but it was a wave of exile at that time, or at least a couple of exile events, and late 8th century. After that period, still a lot of people remained in Samaria. It did not become empty. We don't see in archaeology, we don't see much of a difference in the material culture at that time. So it's not, the exile was mostly from the city of Samaria itself, not the entire region. And he says, if I remember correctly, something like 27,000 or 27,500 or 600, something like that, that he took from the city of Samaria and exiled them to Assyria. And instead, in their place, he moved people from the internal parts of Mesopotamia and transplanted them in Samaria. Again, we don't have any trace of that in the material record. We don't see any material culture from Mesopotamia popping up in Samaria at that time. So, or almost none. And so nothing. What we do see might have come just through trade, not from people actually moving there. So, so that's the 7th century. There was an exile, but the extent of it was. It certainly left a mark. And it caused some people, there's a discussion in scholarship just how many, but some of the northern people from Samaria, from Israel, if you will, came down to and lived and just migrated to Judea, to their Yahwist brethren. And so that's 7th century. End of the 7th century and into the 6th century, there is a very interesting phenomenon. Prior to that point in time, the naming conventions were very clear. The theophoric element in a personal name, what I mean by theophoric element is the name of the deity in a personal name. So, for example, you have a name like Yehoshua or Yehoshama, right? Like Jesus, right? Yehoshua.
Yeah.
Okay, so it means Yehoshua means Yeho is the theophoric element because it's the name of the deity, and then add to it an adjective or a verb that describes that deity. So that's how these theophoric names are composed: a name or an adjective added to combined with a name of a deity. So a verb or an adjective with a name of a deity, that's a theophoric name. And in the north, the theophoric element for Yahweh was just Yo. Okay, Yod Vav, Yo. And very consistently. And in the south, it was Yahweh. Okay?
YHW, right?
YHW, exactly. So these are, and it was very clear. You could identify a name from the north because it had Yo, and a name from the south because it was Yahweh. Very clear distinction. End of the 7th century and into the 6th century, there is a grassroots reform happening across everywhere where Yahwists are settling. Okay, so you have all the Yo names, the YW names, get completely eradicated from the onomasticon, from the list of names. All the names become standardized with the Yahweh element. Now, this is a reform. This
What
is a
time you said?
reform.
What time is this?
Seventh.
End of the 7th century and into the 6th century, after the destruction of Jerusalem in 586 before the current era.
Oh, right at that time.
Names are completely standardized after that point.
So just so I
Everywhere.
have you correct, from 722, when the Assyrians disperse, up to the Babylonian, there's a solidifying of YHW universally, in the north included, so that everyone.
So it's 522 is the end of the 8th century. I'm talking about the end of the 7th century and into the 6th. So it wasn't a linear process.
Yeah, 600s. 600s.
It's happened. Yeah, exactly. So and so it happened from the late 7th century and into the 6th. There were exceptions. Even in Elephantine, we find one single Yo name. That's the exception that makes the rule, right? But about 99% of the cases, these the names change. Now, a name change is a big deal, because especially in antiquity, that was the most intimate component of one's identity. You inherit the name from your father or your grandfather, and they inherited the name from their grandfather. So this is the most kind of central identity component of your own personal family, if not tribe, just your family, your immediate family identity. Now, to change as an all-encompassing change of names for an entire people group from the north, accepting to standardize their names according to the standard of Judea, that is a big deal. That is a huge change. Now, what's important, again, it's a grassroots reform. It's not part of Joseah's reform, for example. It's not part of. It's not a king who ordered this reform. It is from. It starts from the grassroots for whatever reason, and that also explains why it stuck for so long. You know, when the king imposes something, usually it doesn't stick very long. It sticks for the lifetime of that particular king, and then, you know, people don't like, you know, things that are imposed from above. But this one is a this has all the hallmarks of a grassroots reform. We don't know a lot about this, and it's not a full cultic reform. It's certainly not a cult centralization reform or anything like that. It is a name reform, but it touches on the most intimate part of one's familial identity, and to accept. And we even have, in my article I show this, we have a case of the same person changing their name. Okay, and so appearing with the Yo element and then with a Yahweh element in their name for exactly the same person. So we know that there was this, and this reform is important, and was really previously did not come up on the radar. But the data, as I show in my article, is very, very compelling. It's so clear that there is this Yo names get completely eradicated in the early 6th century before the Common Era. Now, what that means also is that what an identity is established here that is pan-Yahwistic. Okay, it's not just Judean, it's not Samarian. Now there's a consolidation of the identity of all Yahwists. Okay.
So this is the Midianites, the Edomites, and, you know, dwellers down. Is that what you're saying?
Only Yahwists. So
those
only
people aren't Yahwists yet?
No, not yet. No, well,
Okay.
I mean, there might have been some. We don't know, but we don't have Yahwists and Edomites. Edomites as Yahwists mentioned, or at least recorded at that point.
So you don't subscribe to the idea that the Midianites were the first people to really are the first Yahwists? Okay.
Well, no, I mean, I think that the first Yahwists were well, it's. I mean, we have a Hittite. We talked about.
Yeah, that's right. You talked about this, the Hittite. So you really think that the Hittites were the first Yahwists?
Well, it's hard to know. We have one person who is a Hittite who is mentioned, who is called Hittite.
Take your scholarly head off for 1 second. If you had to guess, we're just three guys drinking some beers. You just throwing something at the wall. What would you say? You think it's the Hittite sources?
Well, I don't know if it's Hittite necessarily, but it is from the north. I think the Yahweh
Really?
Yahweh as a deity came from northern Syria of today. So from
Wow.
that
Would
area.
this be in line with Giovanni Garbini? Because I love that guy's book. He jabbed at the jugular of some academic stuff. And I brought this to Neil's attention, where he said that the scholars, they didn't realize that even within the Ugaritic text,
There's one source.
Yeah, right. But
Not a
still,
lot.
Giovanni thinks when you get to the older stuff,
The yam thing,
yeah, he says, Yah is my son. Most scholars want to try and okay, hold on, he's talking about yam, he's not talking about Yahweh. Whereas Giovanni's like, man, they'll do anything they can to get Yahweh out of the north, and like not realize this guy's already.
They don't want him to be in the pantheon, because they want Yahweh to be special and alone. There's a push to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas I think you might be onto something there. And now the Syrian Hittite thing makes it even more interesting, because I mean, who knows? I mean, there's a lot going on there. You got the god Ea over there. The Hittites adopt this god.
Well,
Ea.
I mean, the thing about Yaubidi, so Yaubidi is the guy we're talking about from Hamat, and he was a Hittite king of Hamat. So he was a Hittite king of an Aramean city. Okay, so that's already an interesting situation there. Who rebelled against the Neo-Assyrians and was flayed alive, according to their records, because of his rebellion. Anyway, so but that's why we know of him, because he is recorded as an enemy of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, and his fate was accordingly. But in his name is, and sometimes now it's interesting because his name is sometimes spelled with Yah as the theophoric element, and sometimes with El as a theophoric element. So so that's also a very interesting data point right there. But so there is some kind of identification right there, which is obvious to us, of course. But the
Hittites were actually down in that Syrian region for a while.
Of course, yeah.
So this actually checks out, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, with what's nice is that we have the identifier for a deity. So it's called the Dingir identifier,
right,
or the determinative, that shows that this element in the name is the name of a deity. Okay, it's not just it could be Yah as a who knows, as a name of a forefather, or a name of whatever it might be, right? It could be a name of we don't know, right? A word in Hittite that we're not familiar with, whatever it is. But here it's very explicit. We know that it is a theophoric element in the name, so we know that it is the deity Yahweh in this Hittite name.
This is what you're talking about.
That's right. The Dingir identifier.
You know, some people might be like, "What is he talking about, Dingir?" I just want to make sure people know.
Right.
You know?
Thanks. That's important.
Yeah.
So his name has that, but for El and for Yahweh. But his name is, clearly also a Yahwistic name. Okay. And so that's a very important, certainly a very important character. I wish we knew more about him, and maybe we will find out more about him with excavations in the future in Syria as well. And I'm always hopeful to learn more about him, as I am about several other things.
Have you or anyone published yet on arguing for a possible Hittite import of Yahweh?
Not that I know of. I'm working on.
Yeah, because you better get on that. Someone watching this right now might steal it. This is a big deal. That's big news.
Yeah, you know what? I don't mind people stealing this. We're all working together, so I don't really mind.
Yeah, I don't think someone will. But
we're all working together. There are scholars who like to keep secrets, and that's all about. Right. I don't believe that. I believe in open scholarship. And
we're here to learn. We're not here to compete with each other. If someone
beats me to the punch, there's a lot more that I can contribute otherwise as well. So I'm not too worried about that. Okay, so back to the name reform what's really important there is that we have in the 6th century a pan-Yahwistic ethno-religious or ethno-cultic identity that is not unique to Judea, even though it is Yahud. Okay, so it because it comes from the theophoric name. We find these names in Elephantine. We find these names in the Babylonia area, right, in El Yahudu and other places like that, and of course in Samaria and Judea as these administrative provinces. Now, so there is a standardization of names. It's also interesting to note, and I should mention this in passing, that often when tribes migrate, or not often, but we know of this phenomenon that when tribes migrate, they take on names that reflect the place that they are migrating to. I don't believe that this is the case here, because they did migrate. We know that there was a migration from the north to Judea. That might explain some of this name reform, or it certainly does explain some of this name reform. Of course, that's an impetus when you're trying to kind of plant yourself within a host society where the name difference is just one letter. It's very easy, and it's to try to assimilate by just changing that theophoric element in your name. But the fact is that it happened not just in Judea, but it also happened in sources in Samaria, happened in Elephantine, happened in Babylonia as well. So we see it across the board. And again, it's not due to migration, because they migrated to Elephantine, they migrated to Babylonia. They did not change their names there. That name reform migrated with them. So it was certainly an important, again, grassroots effort by the people to establish an identity. Now here
was Josiah. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, of course, yes. Well, you know what? But it's interesting, because there might have been a memory that persisted that there was some kind of reform in the late 7th century. Okay, so they might have not connected it to the right reform, to the correct reform, but there might have been some memory, maybe. And again, of course, this is completely speculative, but that they remember that there was some kind of reform at that period in time. Now, Now, this is where we come back to this folk etymology that we talked about earlier. Folk etymology is extremely important, and I repeat this again and again and again, both in my lectures and in my teaching. We tend to discount folk etymology because it's not scientific, really. It's because scientific etymology looks at actual documents where you can see the evolution of a certain word or certain.
Right.
But people in antiquity had no clue. They didn't know what the scientific etymology might be. Right. That takes really. You need to spend time with primary sources and study the evolution over time. They didn't do that. They looked at folk etymology, and we need to work with that and see if we can find any proof of actual folk etymology being followed at that time. So once you establish a common identity, a common cultic identity around a certain variant of the divine name Yahweh, so the Yud Hey Vav, or Yahweh, Yahweh, as the name of the province of Judah, right, the province of Yehuda, sounds like a theophoric name. Now, the scientific etymology of Judah is still an open question. We don't know. We can't really explain the Daled, the D sound in the name. So we don't know etymologically to explain the name Judah yet. There are different theories, but we don't have an actual explanation. In the Bible, they explain this name as a theophoric name. The name of Judah is explained in the book of Genesis when Leah gives birth to Judah, to the tribe of Judah, or to Judah as the kind of the progenitor of the tribe. She explained the name as she explains the Daled in the name as deriving from the verb to give thanks. Okay, so now I shall give thanks to Yahweh. That's the name. So this is a folk etymology. We have that recorded at least in the Bible. Much later, of course, but it's still recorded in the Bible. Much later, at least according to my studies. Of course, a lot of people would disagree with that. But we have this folk etymology recorded somewhere, where Judah, as a place name, as the name Judah is explained as a theophoric name. I will give thanks to Yahweh, to Yahweh. And if you live in a society where all or a big chunk of the names around you that you live in, of the people that you're surrounded with, their names have this theophoric name, and you live in a province that has exactly the same theophoric element, then folk etymology is only natural. And again, it is recorded in the Bible, such folk etymology. And so people would identify with the name Judah whether or not they live in Judah, just by virtue of participating in this name reform. Okay. So Judah becomes more than just a name of a province at that point. It is also, it would also be connected to a global identity, or not global, but a much wider identity that goes all over the
That's
Yahwistic
interesting
diaspora.
because it's interesting because today Jew has two meanings too. It can be ethnicity and it could be religious.
That's
and
right.
you're seeing Judah, as you're pointing out, almost has those early on. It almost has that sort of those roots of that. Basically.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of, especially in biblical studies, a lot of scholars put too much, kind of accept this idea that there was this absolute dichotomy between the North and the South, as is mentioned in the Bible in certain places. So that does not seem to have been the historical profile at that point in time. We have in Elephantine, we have letters that are sent to both Samaria and Judea, and responses coming back from Samaria and Judea. We have in Papyrus Amherst 63, which I think we already mentioned in our discussions, Papyrus Amherst 63, very important document. That document mentions a Judean that talks about his brother from Samaria. So literally calls him brother. That document is dated to about the 4th century now before the Common Era. We don't know exactly when to date it to, but about 4th or early 3rd century before the Common Era. Found in Egypt somewhere. We don't exactly know where. And anyway, so we do have records, and even Second Maccabees. So now we're going into the 2nd century before the Common Era. Even Second Maccabees identifies the Samarians as being of the same genos, meaning of the same race as the Judeans. So they are brothers, I mean, literally genetically related.
Literally the word gene, genos.
Exactly,
gene.
the same genos. Exactly. That's in Second Maccabees. So we have a very long-term, longue durée, what's called the longue durée, long-term memory here, or long-term effect of Judeans and Samarians seeing each other as brothers. Okay. What I mentioned in my talk yesterday as well is that we may have, and this is for now, I can't be sure, but there is on Mount Gerizim. So on Mount Gerizim, there was a temple, a Samarian temple, a Yahwistic temple,
Right.
a temple to Yahweh on Mount Gerizim. From the middle of or I would say from the end, the final quarter of the 5th century before the Common Era onwards, there was an actual monumental temple on Mount Gerizim. And there we have a lot of inscriptions. And one of these inscriptions that's very interesting has Yahud and Yehuda on it. And that's technically, that's a name that you would expect from someone from Judah, not from a Samarian. Again, but I do want to remind that we just talked about a pan-Yahwistic identity. So it could be, we cannot discount a Samarian also being called Judah, although we have no record of that. But if this is the case, we have a Judean that came to actually offer a sacrifice on Mount Gerizim rather than Jerusalem or other temples in the south.
That's just like someone from Eleusis going to Delphi which was common.
Exactly.
It's the same distance, probably too.
That's great. That's a great point. We have absolutely recorded cases where people from Samaria, the city of Samaria, went to Mount Gerizim to offer their sacrifice. There was almost certainly also a temple in Samaria itself. Okay.
Wouldn't this also point out the fact that it's not centralized? What the biblical portrayal is a romanticized, really southern attempt to say it was always here and it was always meant to be here, even though there are echoes of Gerizim prior to the north was really there prior to the Judean, whoever the Judean or at least seemingly southern scribe.
Well, in the book of Deuteronomy is non-committal. It doesn't commit to the place that Yahweh will choose.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Really?
I didn't know that.
Not Jerusalem?
What's that?
Deuteronomy is not committed to Jerusalem at all?
No.
I thought the Deuteronomist was. Is it the priestly source then that we call priestly source?
Well, the Torah. The Torah does not mention. The Torah does not mention Jerusalem as a place of cultic centralization.
Wow.
Now we have in Deuteronomy.
I missed that for some reason. I guess I wasn't paying attention. Yeah.
So in Deuteronomy 12, you have the place that in the Masoretic text, the place that Yahweh will choose. Okay, and that's where you will serve Yahweh, in the place that He will choose. In the Samaritan Pentateuch, that place is already chosen. It's not will choose, but He has chosen. And that connects to Deuteronomy 27, where that place is Mount Gerizim. But you have to connect that. It's not explicit. You have to actively read the text and identify. And
how do you connect that? Take us through that. This to me, someone might not understand why you think that. Is that too long?
No. I mean, it's very easy. It's okay. Basically in both cases it says that's where you will serve God. But in Deuteronomy 12 it says, at least in Masoretic text, it's about the future. And then in 27, 28, it's about Mount Gerizim because they've arrived to Mount Gerizim already, and in a very similar formulation of the text appears there again. So it gives you this kind of narrative echo of these two areas. It's not explicitly connected. It's connected.
Yeah, because it starts. It's about the one place of worship, Deuteronomy 12, right?
That's right. But it never says
Jerusalem.
It doesn't say where it is.
Oh my! I never even thought about that. I never even.
It's clever how the Samaritan Pentateuch though literally nails it down into Gerizim. I wonder if they were the first to try and centralize worship in a sense, but I don't know.
We don't really know. But what's interesting in Deuteronomy is that Deuteronomy, certainly chapters, it's certainly 27, 28. And really the Pentateuch as a whole. Tends to be more northern than southern, and especially in Deuteronomy. So where you have the scene in front of Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim, when you write down the law, right? When you write down the words that you need to write down on the stones, then that's in Samarian territory. That's in Shechem. That's in Nablus. That's right in. So the words of the Torah are written down in the heart of Samarian territory, not just the heart, but that Nablus or Shechem and these two twin mountains, Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim.
That's what I was going to say. That's so Mount Ebal. This is in Samaria.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so these two mountains.
Why did I think this was in the south?
No.
There's Mount Gerizim right here. Okay. Yeah. Wow, I'm learning something. I thought I was pretty well read on the Torah stuff. I guess I'm not. I didn't know.
What's interesting is this is in the Masoretic in chapter 27 and 28. This is in the Masoretic, which kind of makes you realize like this. If anyone had if they were disputing power struggle over whose mountain, let's just say, like even the Masoretic seems to at least be closer with the few chapters later in Deuteronomy, wouldn't you say? Or
I mean, in the Samaritan text, which is not, we know from Qumran and from really early translations, very early Greek translations, and even the Vetus Latina, the Latin, the old Latin translation, that the blessed mountain is Mount Gerizim, as opposed to the Masoretic, which is the curse, which where Mount Ebal is exactly. So we know that from Qumran, and we know that and Qumran were not Samaritans. I mean, the community in Qumran were not Samaritans. They would not, necessarily conserve Samaritan texts. I think there is pretty much scholarly consensus now that the older version of Deuteronomy 27 had Mount Gerizim as the blessed mountain and not Mount Ebal. And that's the Samaritan view. That's the Samaritan
It's
view.
pretty wild that these guys get cursed, and like, is that it? That's the end of them.
Well, I mean, there's also another but there's also another thing to keep in mind here. We found this in Qumran. Okay, so that's about maybe first century before the Common Era. But in the Masoretic text, it's not. It's Mount Ebal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they were still editing the Pentateuch, even Deuteronomy, in the first century period before the Common Era, right?
That's wild.
So, I mean, the Pentateuch was still being edited at the time. That's really important to.
It is,
and even a single word, right? Gerizim instead of Ebal, or Ebal instead of Gerizim, even to the editing one word for polemical reasons, right? That's why I call the biblical text really a battlefield of ideas. Right? It's a battlefield of ideas.
Even take the Greek, for example, where in the oldest manuscripts from Oxyrhynchus and Qumran, you have the tetragrammaton or Yao in the Greek. And in some versions, they go from Greek to Hebrew, Paleo-Hebrew, and changed just for the name of Yahweh. It goes from right to left, Yahweh, and then back to Greek again.
Right.
And the fact that gets systemized by the Christians later, where they just take all that out and put in Kurios, and it's the Lord, the Lord, the Lord, that shows you the battleground of ideas happening in the text.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is this obsession with working on the most authoritative text that comes from Alexandria, and which we already talked about a lot. But that idea of this obsession with the authoritative text, and now me and my kind of ideological group are going to work and try to produce this text that we believe is more that we want to be more authoritative, and you're going to have, the Hasmoneans would produce a text that they want to be more authoritative, and then different sects would maybe adopt parts of that and not adopt other parts. But this was a period post Alexandria where this obsession by people on having an authoritative text became truly, and of course that continued into Christianity as well. This obsession.
I just want people to see what I'm talking about real quick. You see how this is a Greek manuscript? And then look at this right here where the arrow is. It turns into Paleo-Hebrew for a second and then back to Greek. So anyways, back to what you were saying.
Yeah, so we talked about this consolidation of identity in the 6th century and into the 5th century and really into the 4th century as well, and the close relations between Samarians and Judeans throughout that period. Now, in the 4th century, I mean, of course, even before that, we already have diasporas of Yahwists. We don't know, because of the name reform, we don't know if people in Babylonia, because it's the same name, so we don't know if people in Babylonia were from the north or the south. Again, it's really impossible to know because they had the same names at that point in time already. Same thing for Elephantine. We don't know if they are from the north or the south. There are reasons to believe that at least part of the community in Elephantine, and we'll get to that in a minute, part of the community was Samarian as well in Elephantine. So there are reasons to believe that. But there's no reason why they wouldn't commingle. Again, they saw themselves as part of the same basic entity. So that transcends the administrative borders of Judea. Okay, they are Yahwists. So they identify as Yehudi. Now, identifying as Yehudi post name reform does not mean that you are from Judah necessarily. Okay,
this is where that broadening kind of umbrella starts to begin.
Exactly, via this folk etymology that we also find documented even in the Bible, right? So this folk etymology, which was also so natural for people to have, If all the names around you look like the name of the province, then you would make the name of the province also to be theophoric. Whether that's the actual etymology of that name, the scientific etymology of Judah or not, the folk etymology would certainly have people see it as an expression of one person being a Yahwist. So I don't think that identifying as Yehudi necessarily makes you Judean post the name reform.
Got it.
And the people in Elephantine identifying as Yehudi does not necessarily make them Judean post name reform as well.
Just for people who don't get it, the geography of where you're from, you would imagine that's what the name identifies them as. No, this is where you see a break. You can live in New York and still be a Floridian, is the point, so to speak. I know it's much more religious and central to the devotion of Yahweh.
Well, I mean, it's religious. Like you can be Jewish in New York, and you can be Jewish in Jerusalem. You can be Jewish in that's right. It's really it's a cultic. It's an ethno-cultic or ethno-religious identifier.
Got it.
And that's really what it is. I mean, it's very simple for us to understand. But in scholarship, we tend to see things. Up until now, we saw things, and I did that as well up until where I saw that the data doesn't correspond to that necessarily.
But you did how you mentioned how the etymology of Judah, Yehud, might have this Yahweh in it.
Right.
So do you think
the folk etymology, right?
We're talking about folk etymology. Do you think that the Elephantine Yehudim were aware of this and like carried this tradition themselves?
Yeah, I think it's well. I don't know if they were aware of this specific folk etymology that is also mentioned in the Bible. We can't know. But again, when you're living amongst people, and your own personal name might have the Yahoo theophoric element in the name, and you have Yehuda as a geographic identifier. It's very easy to just say, well, this is my identity. I identify as a Yahudi because I am a Yahwist, basically. I mean, the name, of course, no one said Yahwist in antiquity, right? So to identify as a Yahwist, this basically is to be Yehudi.
Right.
We tend, and I used to do this also for a very long time, to basically just say Yehudi is Judean up until the 2nd century before the Common Era, where we have Judaism actually coming into being. But now I think it's basically someone who is basically identifying as part of this name reform. It's
somewhere from the 6th to 5th centuries BCE.
But someone who identifies basically this basically says I'm a Yahwist rather than I am a Judean. And this is, of course, this will be controversial in scholarship, but I think that the data bears me out on this. This is very new, right? This is very, in many ways, cutting edge. So we have this, but certainly we have whether they identified the identifier Yehudi is related to that or not. There was clearly a consolidation of the identity at that time, and all the names are standardized. Again, which in itself it's truly a striking event. Once the names are standardized, we as we said there, we have Judeans and Samarians seeing each other as brothers, and we move into now the late 4th century. Now Alexander the Great, we are moving out of the Persian Empire, and so Alexander the Great, when he conquers Tyre and then Gaza, he uses, according to Josephus, 8,000 Samarian troops. Sorry about that. He uses 8,000 Samarian troops in his army, and he gives them, according to Josephus, land in the Tabaid area, so in Upper Egypt, southern Egypt. So they get actual land. They get land grants for participating in Alexander's army, and they move to Egypt. So we know that there was a significant.
that's a very plausible thing. I read Arian, and he gives the Scythians land for fighting in the army.
Yeah.
So this sounds like something that checks out that Alexander would do. If you fight in his army, he's going to.
We know that
land.
he did that for others as well. Of course, yeah. Now he did that for Judeans as well in Alexandria. So we know that there was a very large community in Alexandria that, and probably also Samarians. I mean, not just Judeans, but also Samarians in Alexandria as well.
Right down the street from the library.
I gotta ask you this because recently it's come up in some of my conversations that I've been having in a lot of these spaces. Is the Josephus story of Alexander going into Jerusalem and doing a sacrifice? What do you think? This is historical? What do you think?
Who knows? I mean, I don't think the honest answer is who knows. Who knows?
I think it's apocryphal because when you read it carefully, I mean, not to say there isn't a kernel, but he supposedly has presented the book of Daniel.
Of course.
Yeah, and that didn't happen. But Arian cites all the sources like Hieronymus and Callisthenes, all these the guy who was walking around with Alexander, and these are the sources that were passed down, and none of them have this. So I just wonder, maybe. Yeah,
I mean, again, like Derek said, I mean, there might be a kernel of truth into that. He might have gone into Jerusalem just to recruit mercenaries. I mean, right? That could have been the case, which he did everywhere. I mean, his army was very heavily mercenary based, and so there might be a kernel of truth in him just going to Jerusalem because of that. Meeting the high priest, certainly being presented the book of Daniel, that seems mythological.
Hey, this book has you in it, by the way. Like, here, this book talks about you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So absolutely. So myth often has a kernel of truth in it.
Sure.
It might be very, very far removed from what we get in the final version of the myth, but there is a. Well,
we do know for sure that he was in Beth Shean, and they set up that city of Scythopolis, and he gave the Scythians that city to fortify. And then they set up a temple, or they set up a grotto to Pan. The grotto of Pan was built in that time by Alexander's army. So we know he's in that region. It's not that crazy.
Oh, he's definitely, of course, he's in that region. He laid siege to Tyre and conquered Tyre for I think it was 8 months siege to Tyre, and then conquered huge battle. And the Samarians definitely participated, probably some Judeans as well, but the Samarians definitely participated in that battle. And then down Gaza as well, laid siege, took that, and then down to Egypt. And of course, conquered Egypt. And then gave land. We know that he gave land to Samarians in Egypt, not in Samaria, in Egypt. So we have a major diaspora, very powerful diaspora forming in Egypt that is Samarian and Judean in Alexandria and in the Fayum. The Fayum is an oasis in Egypt where in the 3rd century before the Common Era, there was a village called Samaria. So literally a village of Samarians.
Oh, that's what it means?
Yep.
Samaria. Oh, Samaria. Okay.
Samaria. And that village,
New Samaria, like New York,
like New Samaria, New York, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we have papyri from Samaria, and they have Yahwistic names there. And we have I think about 19 people that identify as Judeos. Now, there's been a lot of discussion in scholarship about that. They're in Samaria, but they identify as Judeos? Are they Judean? Are they converted? Some scholars even suggested the conversion from, I guess, Samarianism to Judaism. That does I don't subscribe to that. Again, I say according to my research, they had a unified identity already from the 6th century, so there was no need to convert, so to speak.
That's interesting, because a lot of times today you get, especially I'm just talking on the internet, not in scholarly circles, there's this like need to separate Jews from Israelites and Samarians, and they're all different. But you're saying, actually, no, this is very nuanced. This is very gray. These terms. This
is, and for us in modern times, we tend to be way too strict about these things.
Well, then to your point about it, though, in this community, they have this this name. What is your explanation? What do you think is most likely on why they have those names? Is it just simply these particular names are just to these people, but everyone also fell under that same umbrella?
No, we're talking about the village of Samaria.
Yeah, the new village of Samaria.
So before we do that, I'll just take a little detour to explain what I mean. In Elephantine, the same people identifying as Yehudi also identify as Aramean. Okay, in Elephantine, you have the same person.
Aramean?
Aramean, yeah.
Huh. Because Arameans are like, aren't they Indo-European people?
No. They're Semitic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking Armenian. Okay.
No, not Armenian. No. Aramean.
Yeah, okay. Sorry,
Aramaic.
my fault. I heard you wrong.
So they identify as Aramean.
Aramean, got it.
The same person. So I have an article on that. Also, it's called Identity in the Achaemenid Period. And there I trace these cases and I try to explain them. And so we have people identifying as Yehudi and then also identifying as Aramean, which is very interesting as well. So identity was much more fluid in antiquity than we tend to think today, that it was a very static thing. No, it was pretty fluid. So I am personally not that surprised to have someone in Samaria identify as a Judeos, but he might have been, or Judaya. There's also a female Samarians who are identify as Judaya, not Judeos. And so Judea, I should say. So you have, and they might still be Samarians. They don't have to be Judean to identify as Judeos or Judea. Again, because they are already living in a situation where there is a pan-Yahwistic identity already. So you have this village of Samaria in the 3rd century before the current era. Now, we're already talking about the diaspora. This is the diaspora in Egypt in Hellenistic times. Now, going much to the north, to the Cyclades Islands, to Delos, to the island of Delos.
Oh, yeah.
Little island.
Delos, I was there.
Oh, you were there. Fantastic.
They had that synagogue there, but it's not really a synagogue, right?
Right. It's
Theos Hypsistos. I think it's a Theos Hypsistos temple.
There's a Serapion there. That's the main structure there, Serapis. And then there is, next to it, there is a place where they found 2 inscriptions that are written by the Israelite, so the Israelites, right? That's now the first time. So we were talking about roughly around 200 BCE. We don't know exactly when to date that, but I'm kind of giving you the median between different dating proposals that were proposed up until now. So around 200 BCE, we have the first time that we have a people group identifying as Israel.
And it's in Greece, out of all places?
Again, since Merneptah. So so for a millennium.
Wow.
For an entire millennium.
Because you said it was a place name after the Merneptah. So like it's not a people name necessarily.
That's right.
So for over 1,000 years.
That's right.
But this is not
for
the
almost
same
exactly 1,000 years.
This is not the same place as the so-called Delos synagogue, though. This is a different spot.
No, it's exactly the same place.
Really? Because I was under the impression that
it's not. It's next to the Serapion.
Okay, because I was going to say you have the Delos synagogue, and this turned out to not be a synagogue because all they had was Theos Hypsistos. But this could be we know now this is actually there's a god, a pagan god called Theos Hypsistos, God Most High.
Hypsistos is Elion in the Bible, right?
Yeah. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's not. This is why they thought it was a synagogue. But then it turned out like this might not be a synagogue because the Hypsisterians were around at this time, Greek Hypsisterians.
Yeah, but there was, Yahweh and Hypsistos have a long history of
Gregory of Nyssa writes about this, how they the Hypsisterians all became Christians eventually.
Yeah.
Gregory
No, I mean,
Visa
he
was one of
discussed-
these. He was one of them, actually.
And Elyon, of course, in Canaanite sources goes way back, and we have it in the Bible as well. I mean, we have an actual. I think we talked about this, but we actually have a triad in the Bible of Shaddai, Elyon, and Yahweh.
Yeah,
As a triad. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah. So we have
Trinitarians are going, yeah, I like this
Yeah.
guy. Yeah,
Well, it's a triad. It's not a trinity. It's
right.
a
It's
triad.
very different. I
Very
Of
know.
course.
Yeah,
A triad is three. It's not 3 in 1. It's 3, right? So
Three different
Trinity
ones.
is supposed to be 3 in 1.
and their triads are extremely common. Extremely.
Oh, I
common.
mean, they are the standard, really.
Yeah.
Triads are extremely
Capitoline triad, for example. In Rome.
Absolutely. And so
So over 1,000 years, it shows the name Israel in Delos up here in Greece.
I wouldn't say over. It's almost exactly 1,000 years.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking about 1208, and now we're talking 200.
Got it.
So it's almost exactly 1,000 years, where we don't have, at least none recorded so far. We might tomorrow find another record of Israel being documented somewhere as a people group, somewhere during that millennium. We don't know, but from the records we have today, we have a 1,000-year gap of the people group called Israel actually documented during that entire time. Now, some people might read the Mesha Stele as a people group. Just because of the parallelisms and comparing it to the Neo-Assyrian sources of the time, I don't see it as a people group in the Mesha Stele. But some people might argue. In that case, we have about 750 years instead of a millennium between.
I'll tell you what, though,
about half a millennium instead of a millennium.
This island of Delos is so mysterious to me because, like, you go there and it's got these like the Serapeum you mentioned. It's got the House of Dionysus. It's got a Temple of Apollo, and then there's like this house called the Poseidonus Club that was there. And apparently, this is how they explain it. This Poseidonus Club was a place for merchants, Phoenician, Egyptian, Roman, Greek, and they would all go and gather here. And they had triads that there was a Phoenician triad, Egyptian triad, a Roman triad, all in this one place. And then now you're mentioning that this is where the Israelites were at too. So, and then the whole the whole League of Delos, these places are all, the hegemon is right there in Delos.
Now,
so
one more,
what's going on
absolutely,
here?
one more data point on this, which is important. They say we are the Israelites who send tribute tax to Mount Gerizim.
Oh.
So it's not just, they don't just say, okay, we're Israelites, but they are clearly Samarian, right? So this is Israelites. So after Merneptah, again, according to the records we have today, after Merneptah, the only Israelites are actually the Samarians, not the Judeans. Okay. In the extra biblical record. In the Bible, a very interesting phenomenon happens where in Ezra and Nehemiah, books that are Judean, talk about their God as the God of Israel and the people as the sons of Israel, right? And so, but they're Judeans, identifying as Israel and identifying their God as the God of Israel, but they're Judeans.
I was able to pull up an article real quick just to show people where it says the Samaritans in Delos inscription as Israelites and development of the form. Yeah. So this is, this is fascinating.
Yeah. Derek, if you want to pull up the,
you had this in yours too?
Sure.
Okay.
I actually have the Greek text and the translation of the Delos. Just
perfect.
Go.
Let me know where.
I think it's further down from here. Yeah.
There it is.
No. This is okay. So this one is also interesting. We'll come back to this. Just go to Delos now for a second here, and so this is the diaspora, Egypt, and Delos. So this there you go. So this is the these are the Delos. This is the two Delos inscriptions, And you can see Israelite, that with a red frame around it, and then Ar Gerizim in one word, which is also very Samarian. We see that also in the Samarian Pentateuch. And you see that both in the Greek and
I see Israelite.
Yeah. And so these are the two Delos inscriptions. Now, in a different inscription in the Serapeum on Delos, we have, and if you scroll down one more slide down, you have, we also have
that's the Serapeum, right?
Pravlos Samarevs, Pravlos the Samarian, who is mentioned in the list of contributors to the Serapeum.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the Serapeum
so he is
right
a
there.
Samarian, contributing to the Serapeum for the benefit of his brothers and
sisters. What? So they're related to the Serapeum too?
Yep.
Whoa. Derek, we were just talking about how the Talmud has Serapis as a deified version of Joseph.
Yes.
Gad, you know this. You know this, right?
No.
There's a passage in the Talmud that says that the god Serapis is Joseph from the Bible, deified.
Okay.
So they're obviously extremely Hellenized. Yeah. But what I find interesting is when we get to this whole phenomena of God-fearers in the synagogue, and everyone acts like this is a shocking phenomena. When you're looking at the reverse here, you've got Samaritans and people from Judea and all over going to these temples, to these other places, and they might have found common ground to have their own triad, but they're participating and funding, like you see here. Come on, it seems to be the common trope.
I mean, it's not just here, but it's everywhere. And again, in scholarship, we tend to see things way too black and white, and things were a lot more colorful in antiquity. Now, even in the letter of Pseudo Aristeas, the what's called the letter of Aristeas, which is basically a kind of a legend that was written in order to explain several things about Alexandrian Judaism, but specifically the translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek. So that letter of Aristeas or Pseudo Aristeas, even in that letter, which is 2nd century before the Common Era, even late 2nd century before the Common Era, even in that letter he writes to Ptolemy. Again, it's a mythical letter, but it still represents how people thought at the time. He says that deity that we call Zeus, they call Yahweh. Okay, so but it says it's the same deity.
Yeah,
right.
It's just a different name, right?
I'll
go even further, in Acts chapter. So even in the New Testament,
I love this.
Acts chapter 17, the words that were put in the mouth of Paul in Athens, where he says that God, that the unknown God that you worship, that's the God that I'm preaching to you. It's the same God, right?
Yeah.
Just a different. So this idea of assimilation, I mean, this is assimilation, right?
Yeah.
It's exactly the same God, and Paul is doing the exact same assimilation. Paul is not monotheistic.
Right.
I mean, Paul is doing exactly the same assimilation here as everyone in his day and age did. Right? I mean, people did not even think about the concept of actual strict monotheism at the time. There wasn't.
Yeah, that's kind of the Middle Platonist like idea that there's this one God, but there's all the gods. They're all together.
Yeah, I mean, strict monotheism is a much later development. In fact, it's an Islamic development. Strict monotheism.
And even in that case, it doesn't really exist because you still have the jinn and you still have.
It cannot. You're right. It cannot. Yeah. Strict monotheism is almost
it's almost impossible.
It's almost impossible.
And then so here's this passage right here, where it says, this is from Avodah Zarah 43, and Rava said the entire sentiment of Rav is referring to a case where one finds vessels with these figures, and in the middle clause is in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda. It is taught in the Bereta that Rabbi Yehuda adds forbidden figures as a figure of nursing woman, the image of Isis and Horus. And Serapis, the figure of a nursing woman, symbolizes Eve, who nurses the entire world. The figure of Serapis is worshipped as symbolizes Joseph, who ruled over Sar and appeased the entire world.
Yeah, well,
distributing food for 7 years.
That's just a word game. It's because of play on words.
Yeah.
But I don't think it necessarily reflects a tradition. It's just a play on words, but maybe it does. I don't know.
But they both come from Alexandria, and like the stories. That's what I'm saying. We were looking at Alexandria, Ptolemy,
Right.
and then they're kind of both coming from that part of the world. It makes sense.
Correct.
Why they would know this.
In any event, so we have. I mean, it's really interesting that this community on Delos, this Samarian community on Delos, identifying as Israelite. Now, in the 3rd century, around the same time that we have this community in Delos, we start seeing in Samarian context Yod Vav names returning. Remember that they disappeared; they were eradicated by the 6th century before the Common Era. The Yod Vav names, the Yo names.
Yeah.
These names now, because of archaizing, because of the need to archaize your people, your ethnicity, to archive your history or even the mythological history of your people. Now they also start going back to adopting the old style names. So the name Yosef or the name Yonatan, right? Not just by the Sumerians, although it's recorded, the earliest records of this are in Samarian context, both in Egypt and on Mount Gerizim. But in the 2nd century, even Yonatan, Afus, the Maccabean, the Hasmonean, has the old style name, Yo, not Yahonatan, but Yonatan. So that's also archaizing the name structure, going back to the way it was before the name reform. So here we can start to see not necessarily kind of the parting of the ways between Samarian and Judeans yet. That will happen later on with Yochanan Hyrcanus, and ultimately destroying the temple of Mount Gerizim in the end of the 2nd century. But we see a differentiation, and they were always there was always differences between the North and the South. I don't want to make it sound homogeneous throughout that. There was a name reform, but it doesn't mean that they became the same, identically the same. Now, I want to tie this to what we saw in Delos and then what we are about to see in Sicily as well. During the 4th century, during the 5th century and the 4th century in Samaria, the reigning dynasty in Samaria was the Sanballat dynasty. And they started minting coins late 5th century. And the coins from the Sanballat dynasty, if you want to scroll up here, the coins that Sanballat is minting has very, very clear Phoenician and Achaemenid.
Persian period, huh?
Yeah. So, I mean, there you go. Here it is. These are the Samaritan coins. And you see this Sidonian galley on the coin at the top here. Mm-hmm. So this is very clearly Phoenician.
Galley?
Yep. And we see the rows there, and you see all the oars there. And so you actually have a Phoenician excuse me, I'm sorry about that again.
You're good.
So you have the Phoenician galley, and you have a satrap next on the other side of the coin. And then you have beneath that also a satrap and a Persian king. So you have very, very, very clear Achaemenid iconography being used in Samaria. Samaria, according to many scholars, some of them of which I quote here, was very, very close to the crown. It had, as opposed to Judea during the Persian period, in Samaria the dynasty was aristocratic, enjoyed, of course, land grants that go with being an aristocrat. It also the role of being a governor passed from father to son rather than an appointment by the crown. Wow. And in Judea, the governor was appointed.
It's the exact opposite of the image we get in the New Testament, where the Samaritans are sort of low.
Yeah,
and the Judeans are up high. But back in the Persian period, they were the aristocrats.
Yeah. But in the New Testament is much later, of course, and you were talking about after the Hasmoneans, after Alexander, after
of course, way different time. Yeah.
But in the Persian period, the Samaria was very close to the crown and very Achaemenid influenced, and Phoenician influence. So, and Sidonian.
What
I
does
think that
Smyrn mean?
explains-
Why does it
that
say
explains-
Smyrn?
Yeah, and I think that explains, and they were also very educated as well. I mean, the populace in general in Samaria, probably more.
Oh, that's
so
what
than
that means. Samaria, Smyrn,
Samarin, yeah, Samarin, yeah.
Shamrin. Okay.
And I think that's why we find them in Delos and in Sicily as well, because they were with the Phoenicians. They also traveled with the Phoenicians.
It's interesting. You got a bull slaying image, kind of like Mithra.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's a later
absolutely.
later rendition, but it is.
Yeah,
kind of
but we find this in Persepolis. We find it really. This is part of a Achaemenid iconography, and it goes back. It's a very old type of iconography of bull slaying. Yeah. So, but this is very, very common in the Achaemenid period. If you scroll down almost to the end, you'll see what I mean by the Sicilian. Yeah, there you go. So here, this is a column that was found in Sicily.
That's an interesting script right there. Of
That's the Samarian script.
Yeah.
Now, Samarian script is dated anywhere between the 2nd century before the current era to about the 3rd century of the Common Era. I would actually date it earlier only because we see how conscious they were of separating themselves, the Samaritans.
Is it going left to right?
Themselves. What's that?
Is it going left to right?
Yeah. It's like
wow.
Yeah. Right to left. Excuse me. Right.
Oh, it's right to left. Why does it looks like it's backwards? The he. Is that a he or is that a shin?
No, that's a yod. Yod and a hey. Yeah.
Those are yods?
Yeah, it's upside down here.
Oh, okay.
And
that makes sense.
And so and this is actually, well, this could be, I mean, this is rise up Yahweh and may your enemies be scattered. What's written on this column in Sicily, in Syracuse. Okay. So, I mean, it's far from Palestine. It's far from the Levant. And so this is found in Sicily. We don't know when to date it to. I mean, it might be anywhere between the 2nd century before and 3rd century after. Or it might have been simply just imported from somewhere else. We don't really know. But it has it has text on it that does correspond to Numbers 10:35. Now, I want to point out something that is a reoccurring theme. The fact that there is this short quote from a biblical text, this late could be an actual quote from the biblical text.
Sure.
It might be. It might, but it can also be something that comes from a common tradition, okay, that also made it into the biblical text, but also made it here. It's not necessary because we have only this, part of a verse.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a actual quote from the Bible.
Is there anything word for word the same or no?
It's word for word the same in these 4 words, right?
Just the 4 words, okay.
But again, this formula could have been much older and predate the Bible, and have impacted the person writing this independently of the Bible, right? The formula might have been an apotropaic formula that was carved on amulets. Who knows, right? I mean, we know the fact that it appears here and it also appears in the Book of Numbers does not mean that the person necessarily quoted from the Book of Numbers here. We don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
I would give him this one. I would give him.
Well,
this
I mean,
one.
this late, it is likely.
Exactly. There's no reason There's no reason that it.
Yeah,
can't.
but then you go to the Ketef Hinnom amulet. So the Ketef Hinnom amulet that I assume you're familiar with.
Yes.
I would need to see it.
Everyone thinks the Ketef Hinnom is the oldest biblical manuscript. Even our friend, what's his name? The one where I'm going back and forth with Daniel on right now, Derek.
Justin.
Even Justin thinks this is a biblical manuscript. He called it a biblical manuscript. I was like,
gotcha.
Now he's a smart guy. But like for some reason, Ketef Hinnom. If I can pull it, Derek, can you pull it?
Yeah,
I can pull it up.
You want to pull it up because I'm not sure how to spell that.
I got it. It's right here. All right. And the people really think that this is evidence of the Bible going back to whatever this is dated to. So this is a good topic to test. 600 BC.
Got it.
And, well, I mean, it's dated. It's the problem is it's really hard to date because it was found
sure.
in a dump, basically. So it's not stratified.
Yeah.
So it's
And
really hard
what
to
exactly
date.
does it say? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
Yahweh, can't read it. The great who keeps the covenant. Is any of this word for word in the Bible at all? From what
Yeah,
I
well, I
gather.
mean, certainly if you go back to the may he keep you and make his face shine upon you, that's very famous, the kind of the priestly blessing that we know from the book of Numbers.
Yeah.
The end here. But we have two versions that are different. But this is, now this is shorter than what we have in the Bible. This version of this text is shorter than what we have in the Bible. Gad Barnea, who was the archaeologist who found these amulets,
Right here,
published
this guy's awesome, by the way. I used to watch him on the Naked Archaeologist.
So when he published this,
cool.
In general, in scholarship, we tend to say that in general, we prefer the shorter text being earlier than the longer text, because usually, not always, but usually we prefer the shorter text. When he published this, he says, he here actually writes in the footnote, usually the shorter text is older, but not in this case. And he doesn't explain why, but he says, not in this case. And I write that in an article that's not out yet. I haven't finished it yet, but I have an article on these amulets. And
he was pretty biased. He was pretty.
I
wouldn't call him an apologist, but he's close.
But I mean, when you say something like this, I usually prefer the shorter version, but not in this case, and don't explain why not in this case.
Right.
That's problematic.
Like we can go to Deuteronomy 32 and realize the Masoretic chops out 4 verses, but there's explicit evidence to why the Masoretic changes the name from gods to sons of Israel. It wants to remove the pantheon. It's definitely got an axe to grind, whereas something like this seems to be make his face shine.
But here's why you can't call this a biblical manuscript.
Right.
Even if it does have a few lines that match, it's not the same. It has to be at least like 9. It has to be like at least more than half the same, at least.
I don't even think that's not even. I mean, that's I mean,
what I'm saying is if it's not the same, it's not the same. The only argument you can make is parts of this
shared tradition
and parts of this have a shared tradition, right? That's
as
far as you can really go on.
Just on what you just said, and just playing the devil's advocate here, even within the different versions of the Bible that we have between Qumran, the Masoretic, the Samaritan Pentateuch, and we see that texts evolved even within the Bible. So within the different kind of iterations of editorial activity on the Bible, that would not be enough of an argument. I do agree with the second part of what you said, because nothing in this text can serve to show that this was not simply a very, very popular text at the time. Now, these are what is clear, that these are amulets, meaning people wore them in order to fight the evil eye, basically to ward off the evil eye.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
These are amulets. That we do know. So clearly, they had these verses. This text had a magical power associated with this. So it was popular.
Mm-hmm.
It was popular as an amulet. So it would make perfect sense for this popular text to later also be adopted by the biblical authors.
Yeah. And that just sounds the most likely scenario going forward.
So this is not enough proof to show that this is, even though it's very similar to the text in the Book of Numbers, it's not enough to say that this person knew of the Book of Numbers.
Right, exactly. Yes, or even the Balaam inscription. They are common name, common character. It's a Gentile.
We have a lot of common things. I mean, you have modern authors quoting from popular idiomatic expressions. It does not mean that they necessarily authored that expression, but it was an idiomatic expression that was popular at the time. I mean, it's idiomatic expression. Certainly, I mean, the thing is that I think that the most incriminating evidence here is that these are amulets.
Right.
Okay, these are amulets. We know amulets around the Mediterranean basin, across the Mediterranean basin, they use formula. So this was a popular formula to ward off the evil eye.
The one thing we can do, though, Gad, is say there is an extensively deep into the past tradition from which later authors are working from. And so therefore, it's when we talk about dating material, that there's so many questions and you have to formulate what you mean. Because if you say, well, a lot of this material is ancient, no joke. I mean, a lot of stuff goes way, way back. But
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, I'll give you a counterexample. If we had found a papyrus, okay, where someone blesses his addressee, the person he's writing to, at the end of a letter, and says, "May Yahweh bless you and make His face shine upon you, etc., and give you peace, etc." Then it would be more likely that this is an actual quote, even though it's not necessarily the case. Even then, he might simply be repeating that very popular formula. It's not necessarily quoting from the Bible. But this would be more of in if it's a personal letter rather than an amulet, I would say it's a little bit higher probability that person knew something about an evolutionary stage of the biblical text. But since this is an amulet, these are two amulets with a very similar text, showing that this text was very popular. Right, we have two of those.
That's true. That's true.
So this text was popular at the time. It's it's really no evidence for knowledge of the Bible. It just means that the biblical author also adopted this text, which was popular for their own purposes.
It's exactly what I'm saying. Like the fact that it has all this extra stuff that's not in Numbers means it's a different text. Period.
Right.
You can't call it a biblical manuscript. You can say, "Oh, look, this text has a lot in common with this biblical manuscript." That's it.
Right.
That's all we can say.
That's right. Absolutely.
God, you just don't want Joshua to be the guy who wrote the e-ball tablet. That's all.
That's all I want. I'm anti-Joshua. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Sorry, we took you off for a road here.
No worries. We really have. I mean, this is a big subject.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back here. We get what you're saying, and we're with you. We actually 100% agree. I mean, it could be, but it also could just be shared tradition, common thing. Who knows? I mean, the difference, I guess you could point out the differences between the example you just gave about the supposed 6th century amulet and this is that this seems every letter here does reflect what we find in Numbers, but it might be just a common tradition at the same time.
Again, because it's much later.
Right.
We know that that there was a Bible at that time, even if it's dated to the 2nd century. If this column inscription from Sicily is dated to the 2nd century before the Common Era, which I don't believe would be the case, but if it is to be dated that early, at least we know that there was some Bible, some form of a biblical text in the 2nd century before the Common Era. If it's dated in the Common Era, then it's even more likely that this would be a biblical. But it could have been because it's on a column. It's column inscription. Now this is laminal column. Of course, often defines the entry point, right, to a certain structure. So it could have served also for, an amuletic type purpose. It could have served as a magical purpose here to say, "Rise up, Yahweh, and may your enemies be scattered against the evil eye." So it might have served for protection at the entry point to a certain place, maybe a synagogue or whatever it might have been.
If I may,
sure.
One more comment about this point: "Rise up, Yahweh, may your enemies be scattered." That's such a generic statement. It's like Christians today. They might say, all things are possible through Christ. It may not be at all whatsoever related to Paul writing a letter to this particular church, but a generic statement of saying, I can make it today. I've got to get through this surgery or anything. Like you said, it could be a generic.
There are a lot of parts of the New Testament, as you know, that clearly came from just idiomatic expressions that people said in early Christian or the Jesus movement in its early days, and then made it into the New Testament. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that, when you write an authoritative text that wants to define an identity, it's almost necessary to use idiomatic expressions that are already popular. So yeah, it's obvious. So this is really what we've done now, is go and study the identifier Israel from Mer Neptah to at least Delos, about 1,000 years, where the people group is identified as Israel, but not for 1,000 years, but at the bookends of this millennium period. So that's on Israel. I spoke yesterday on Hananiah. I don't know if we have time to talk about this. It's going to be very long, and that ties back to this idea of Samaritans and Elephantine. So in Elephantine, we have the famous so-called Passover letter. And I don't call it the Passover letter, and I published on this point. I don't see it as related directly, at least not to the Passover. It might be a kind of prefiguring the Passover, but it's certainly not directly related to the Passover. In any event, this letter, if you scroll down one more slide, people could see what we have from this papyrus. Not a lot remains. It's very fragmentary. But basically, a person by the name of Hananiah writes to his brothers, Yedoniah and his colleagues, the Chela Yehudia, the Judean group of people. I read Chela not as military troops, but as in the Persian sense of the word, which means just an ethnicity, basically a group of people, which in Persian would be Kara. I won't get into details. In my article, I go into more details on that. But in any event, he talks to he addresses his colleagues here and calls them his brothers. May the peace of my brothers, may the gods, plural, seek after at all times. So these are clearly Yahwist, and as is very, very common, I mean, really ubiquitous in the Elephantine sources, they're greeting each other by the blessing of the gods, plural. And that's the common, formula. And then he says, and now this year 5 of King Darius, something, or as I see it, someone has been sent from the king to Al-Shama. Now, so shall you appoint, again, fragmentary, and from day 15th on to the 21st of Nisan, you need to do something, and you need to keep yourself pure and beware. You need to do some kind of work. You need to drink something, and something of leaven. And again, the 21st of Nisan, you need to be in your chambers, or do something in your chambers, or enter your chambers between certain period, and that's really all we have from this very fragmentary papyrus.
And they've forced that into being the Pesach, huh? They
forced this into being the Passover, and I understand why. I mean, the date range of the 15th to the 21st of Nisan, kind of, for anyone being raised in a Jewish or Christian household, it's also almost automatic to kind of connect this date range to
unleavened bread. Yeah,
exactly. To
which is something they do in Persian religion too, though. They have the
exactly. So that's
too.
in my article. I go to a lot of detail into why this is not necessarily Passover, and actually it makes sense for this to be more influenced by Iranian cultic practices than the Passover.
Wow.
This is really just the first full moon of the year. The 15th of Nisan is simply the first full moon of the year. It's not that special. And in the Zoroastrian religion, that was also a very important day. Now, in that article, just so because people listening to this would say, well, why do you think there was a connection to the Zoroastrians? I show that the Yahwists at Elephantine had a fire holder in their temple. And that's what done. Very good job.
I remember.
Yeah. So they had this fire holder in the temple, or associated with their temple at Elephantine. So the level of assimilation that existed between the Yahwists, at least in Elephantine, but I think it wasn't just limited to Elephantine. There's no reason to believe it was limited to Elephantine. The level of assimilation, which we also see later on, right, among the Samarians in Delos, and we see this assimilation really everywhere. Assimilation with different practices of either maybe the Greeks or the Canaanites or the Persians, but the assimilation that they had in the temple at Elephantine was with a fire holder, or what's called also erroneously a fire altar, which is kind of the central piece in the Zoroastrian tradition. So they had that, and I show that what we do have documented is their assimilation with Zoroastrian practices. We don't have the Passover documented yet at that point in time.
Good point.
Anyway, but what I want to focus on here is about the person of Hananiah. And Hananiah is writing this letter very authoritative, and he is clearly a leader above the leaders. He is clearly far above, in terms of authority, the leaders of the community at Elephantine. He orders them what to do. He gives them cultic observances to follow, right? So he is far more authoritative than anyone within the Yahwistic community in Elephantine. But not only that, we have also, if you scroll down one more slide, we have another document from around the same time period where we have kind of accelerating events of persecution on the Yahwistic community in Upper Egypt. And one of these cases, we have Ma'oziah, who is detained, thrown in jail by the local governor of Upper Egypt. A very powerful man. I mean, this is the local governor of Upper Egypt.
Wow.
Half of Egypt is governed by him. And that's the man throwing him, and his name is Widranga, very infamous name in the Elephantine history and in the history of the island of Elephantine. And he throws them into jail. And a pair of servants called Jecho and Hor win his freedom. They're able to negotiate with the governor for the freedom of this person. Okay? These servants are said to be servants of Hananiah in one place in this same document, and in another place of Anani or Ananiah. Okay? You remember when we talked earlier about the Ein Chet interchange, which we see also with the Beit of house of Omri and Chomri, right? Ein Chet interchange. We see it again here. The Chet Ein Chet interchange between Hananiah and Ananiah in the same document, having the same servants. Now, what we need to point out here is that this person, Hananiah or Hananiah, this person negotiates with the local governor through his servants. He doesn't deign to go himself to negotiate with the governor. He sends his servants to do this, and they do it successfully. So Hananiah / Anani here is much more authoritative than the governor. Okay? Now, in Egypt, in the Persian period, and in general, the Persian Empire, the hierarchy was king, right? Darius, Artaxerxes, Xerxes, etc. You had the king. Below the king, you had a system of satraps, which were kind of uber governors. There were governors of several provinces. And then beneath the satraps, you had governors. Okay, so for example, Nehemiah, assuming he's a historical figure, would be a governor of Judea.
Didn't Israel have a different name that's not Israel or Judea, according to the satrap system?
Yeah, no, it's not mentioned at all.
Okay.
I mean, in that system, it's part of the Eber Nahari.
That's what I meant. Eber Nahari. That's what I meant.
Well, but Eber Nahari is all the way from the Euphrates to the border of Egypt. So it's a.
Okay, so they don't. Yeah, this is just a different system.
Yeah, exactly.
I got you.
And that's actually that's one version of Eber Nahari. Eber Nahari's borders, so to speak, changed over time.
Okay.
But that's not representative here. But anyway, so you have Hananiah sending his servants to negotiate with the local governor. So, as I said, the hierarchy is satrap and then governor. Hananiah is far above the governor, but at the level or below or right below the level of the satrap, right? So we have this Hananiah and Anani who is mentioned in several documents from at the same time. Both, I mean, these are clear Yahwistic names, right? Mm-hmm. And at a time that have satrap-like authority in Egypt at the time. This is already striking for a Yahwist to have authority that is almost parallel to that of the satrap, the one who rules all of Egypt, both Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, right? And he's again has a level of authority that is higher than the local governors. So you have a Yahwist and who by the name of Hananiah at that level of authority. Now this Anani, again, Anani and Hananiah is the same person. He is never mentioned with a patronymic. Now that name is very, very popular. We find it also in the Bible. We find it also in other documents from Egypt at the time. Very popular name, Hananiah, Ananiah. Because it's so popular, it needs to be if you're referring to a person by that name, you have to also use a patronymic, saying Hananiah, son of such so and so, right? But this particular Hananiah / Anani is never introduced with a patronymic. It never said Hananiah, son of, or Anani, son of. Okay, never. That means that he is so well known, so notorious, so authoritative, that you cannot mistake him for a different Anani in a given context, right? Mm. He is well known. That's why we are not using. He's introduced. Now he's introduced even in the letters. We have two drafts of a letter that the Elephantine Yahwist sent to Jerusalem to Bagohi, the governor of Judea at the time. In these drafts, Anani appears. That name appears without a patronymic. So even Bagohi, even the governor of Judea, not just in Egypt, but even the governor of Judea knows who this person is without the need of a patronymic. Even though this name is very, very popular, that it would require further identification if the addressee does not know who we're talking about. They just say Anani, and that's enough. They know, the governor knows who they are referring to. Okay, so this person was very well known, very, very authoritative at that time. Now, at the same time, and he's mentioned in this letter to Judea, he is mentioned together with a person called Ostan. Okay, and he's called Ostan, the brother of Anani. Now, at the same time, exactly the same period where Hananiah was in Egypt, we have an Ostan also mentioned, also documented in Saqqara, in the center of power of imperial power in Egypt. And this Ostan is a very, very rare name, Ostan. This name appears again only in the Wadi Dalia papyri in the middle of the 4th century. If you want to pull up the Wadi Dalia papyri, middle of the 4th century now, BCE. And also, this name Ostan, or a variant of Ostan, and I'll explain, appears again in the Wadi Dalia papyri at the same time that the governor of Samaria is called Hananiah. So we have this pairing of a patronymic-less Hananiah and his second in command being Ostan or Asiton, and I'll explain this variant in the name. Both in the letter that was sent to from Elephantine to Judea, in Egypt at the time, unrelated to this document as well, and in Wadi Dalia about 80 years later. Okay, excuse me, about 60 years later. So my argument here is that these connections, I mean, Ostan is a very rare name. This is almost the only occurrence of the name Ostan. Now, Frank Moore Cross already suggested this name as it was found in Wadi Dalia, that this name is Phoenician, meaning Isis has given. Isiton. Okay.
Oh, really?
Isis, it's like Jonathan, right? Yahweh has given.
Oh.
So this is Isis has given, which makes a lot of sense. Now, the variation between Asiton and Ostan simply records the variation of the spelling of the theophoric name Isis.
Is this the papyri right here?
Looks like it, but they all look the same. So I don't.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, they're all very fragmentary and kind of.
Yeah, you can barely see that. But go ahead.
In any case, so we have Ostan Isiton clearly. I think this is the name Isis has given, and it's a very rare name. It's really documented in this name in one other case from that particular period. And so finding this very rare name with the patronymicness less Hananiah, maintaining the same type of relation between them, in one case being a satrap or satrap in training, and in his Sagan, which is his second in command, and also again the same names in the petition from Elephantine to Yahud, and the same names appearing again in Wadi Dalia. I think for this to be a coincidence is highly unlikely for this level of authority at the same time. Now, clearly, also what's interesting is that means that by the middle of the 4th century, they were about 80 years old. Okay, Hananiah would have been about 80 years old. That's a very long, not unheard of, but it's a very long lifespan for the Persian period. Interestingly, Josephus notes that the house of Sanballat, which I claim Hananiah is a scion of, the house of Sanballat was known for its longevity. So that's Josephus also pointing that out. In any case, I think that from the evidence that we have, clearly Hananiah and Anani are the same person, and clearly they were at a level of authority that is only rivaled by the satrap, or identical to that of the satrap at the time. So that's already striking. And again, this association in 3 different places of Hanani and Ostan in this Isis has given, at that level, at these levels of authority, I think is also very striking and cannot be coincidental. So I argue that the Hananiah of the so-called Passover letter is also the person who would become governor of Samaria. Now, this was.
I see what this is doing.
We're talking about the end of the 5th century now, about 410 before the Common Era. Hananiah arriving in Egypt around 419 before the Common Era. Now, the satrap in Egypt at the time was around 410 BCE, was already satrap, held that role for 45 years, Al-Shama. So he has already been satrap for 45 years, clearly needed to be replaced. It was a rule, and history bears it out, that every time there was a change in administration, so a new satrap, every single time there was a change in administration, either in the satrap or even a governor, the Egyptians rebelled to test the new power coming in. So they would use this switch, this change, to rebel against the Achaemenid Empire, and they succeeded. That time they succeeded when Al-Sham left Egypt. They rebelled, and they succeeded. It was during this rebellion, this rebellion of the Egyptians against the Persians, that the Yahwistic temple in Elephantine was destroyed. It was just simply part of the rebellion. People have suggested that it might have had something to do with the Passover or whatever. No, it was simply part of the rebellion. But because they knew that Arsham was already very old, he may die. He was already over 70 years old. They had to bring in someone to be satrap in training to replace Arsham. Now, again, Hananiah is the only person in all of our documentary record to be above the governor, but at the level of a satrap or a little bit below a satrap at the time. So he's really the only candidate we have. There might be, maybe there's someone that we don't have recorded. But I don't think so, because the Yahwists in Elephantine write to Yehud, write to Bagohi, and they mention Anani, they mention Arsham, but they don't mention a different satrap. They would have had to mention a different satrap, because they're saying that we have appealed to the authorities and we haven't received an answer, etc., etc. So they would have explained why they appealed to the satrap. They do mention Anani, and I believe that they. This is I'm getting a little bit too technical here, but this is a draft that was sent after a different draft that we don't have, that they say that they already sent, which might have already explained how they contacted Anani and he didn't respond. What I believe happened here is this: Hananiah was a Samarian. Again, we see that in Wadi Dalia by this association with Ostan. Hananiah was Samarian, was a son or a grandson of Sanballat, an aristocrat. Okay, as I said, the difference between Samaria and Judea was in Samaria, all of the post of being a governor was aristocratic. It went from father to son, and as aristocrats, they also enjoyed the benefits of being aristocrats with land grants, etc., etc. Mount Gerizim might have been one of these land grants, and as parts of Nablus as well. Now, we know from sources, not many sources, but some sources that we have from the Achaemenid period, that the Achaemenids regarded aristocrats from across the empire as special. Not only did they give them land grants, but sons of aristocratic families would go to be educated in the palace. So they would go to Susa to be educated, and would grow up in the palace. That means that he would have grown up with Darius II.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating.
And I believe that what we have in the so-called Passover letter, when he says Darius has sent something, he basically says Darius sent me. Okay, Hananiah basically says Darius has sent me, and again the rest is fragmentary. Now we have this aristocrat sent from Susa to basically take over from these aging satrap Arshama, and a very long period of training is necessary for such a complex satrapy as Egypt was, and to get this person, into the army already being familiar with him, etc., in order to help with the rebellion that was sure to come when Arsham leaves, and did come. That rebellion did come and eventually was successful in driving out the Persian Empire from Egypt. So that was the final rebellion. Now, so according to my
what
analysis,
year is this? Just so we're on the same page.
That's 410
Okay.
Before the Common Era, into around 407, and then Lower Egypt was already taken by the Egyptians by 404, and Upper Egypt probably a little bit later, about 400 BCE.
So this is what you're describing with Hananiah and Darius is like the formation of a new religion kind of formulating. Like he's sort of like Hananiah is almost like one of the creators of Proto-Judaism.
Maybe, possibly.
He's planting the seeds, maybe.
Maybe. I mean, he is clearly a religious figure. I mean, a cultic figure, because he writes this letter that gives them this observance to the so-called Passover letter, this observance to follow. But what's really striking here is this: you have basically a Yahwist, a Samarian, becoming the ruler of Egypt.
Joseph.
Exactly. So
Joseph in the Bible, and the ISIS thing you brought up. The ISIS is my whatever the name, the theophoric name you were describing.
ISIS has given, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally the template, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, that's a different person. That's not Hananiah. That's Ostan, and Yosef just means
okay.
But what is I think the historical kernel of the Joseph story might be this absolutely striking case of a Yahwist becoming the ruler of Egypt, even for a short period of time, and even though he failed, and he was demoted from the position of satrap to being the governor of Samaria, where we find him in the 4th century.
Huh.
Now, we got a lot of pushback from some of the reviewers of this article that is coming out now that say, well, how could a non-Persian become satrap, right? How would a non-Iranian become
there's no
satrap?
examples of other satraps
Of course
that aren't?
we have at exactly the same time, we have Belshunu.
So what the hell are they talking about then?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wrote back. Yeah, I mean, we have examples exactly at the same time.
What is up with these scholars, man?
I know.
Oh,
but
man. Okay, go ahead.
We have a good example exactly at the same time of Belshunu from Babylon, so from the satrapy of Babylonia, becoming satrap of Eber Nahari, which we mentioned earlier, which was not Babylonia, so a neighboring satrapy, and he is Babylonian. He's not Iranian. Okay. We, of course, also have Greeks becoming satraps. That's a different story, much more well known. But Belshunu, exactly, but Belshunu, right in the neighboring satrapy, we're talking now about Eber Nahari, at the same time, almost the same time as Hananiah would have been in exactly the same role in Egypt, a non-Iranian, a Babylonian, becoming satrap of a satrapy where that is neighboring satrapy to the one where he grew up. Okay, It's actually the same thing as we have from Samaria, a satrap becoming a satrap of a satrapy that is neighboring to the one of his, to the one he grew up in. So this is a truly incredible story. I mean, if my analysis is correct, and I think that, again, because of all of these different things coming together, the logical inference here, based on the evidence that we do have, which is I think very solid. But again, it does require some speculation. But speculation that is based on logical inference. I mean, we don't have too many options here. I mean, someone being at that level of authority you don't have too many players in that level.
I'm looking at a name right now who's a satrap of Ionia, and he was a Spartan.
Right.
Spartan.
Yep.
You just debunked that entire class.
But I mean, Belshunu is even better because Belshunu is at the same time in the neighboring satrapy, also in Eber Nahari, which is I mean, it's this entire region had non-Persian satraps at the same time.
This is an interesting thing. I know this is a jump to biblical text about Joseph, but as we've done our interview before talking about the origins of Moses and placing this in the Hellenistic period, there's good reason to think here are literally like Neil was saying, this proto something's coming up. You almost are expecting within the next decades for biblical material to really start being constructed, because in the biblical text, when Joseph tricks his brothers, putting the gold, he puts like gold inside their bags. I believe it says a golden cup. Well, in Ahikar, literally the Persian famous myths of their day, that he is accused and being sentenced to death for stealing a golden cup. And I can't remember the details. It's been a while since I read it, but there's an academic I read who pointed out that the Ahikar, which was, you pointed this out, is the most well-known story in the Persian period.
It was the first bestseller, really, the kind of international bestseller. History.
So the fact that Genesis is echoing this, and also this echo, by the way, goes all the way down to the golden ass. I mean, there is a trope that just continues all the way. I'm looking at that going, man, Genesis comes sometime after the 410s. This period you're describing, likely into the 300s, or at least this material in Genesis seems to have come after that, inspired by this. I
think having a Yahwist be the ruler of Egypt, and a Samarian. Now Joseph is Samarian, of course, as well, right?
Right.
From the area of Shechem and Dothan, that area. So you have a Samarian, son of Jacob, who was a leader a local leader in according, at least the way the Bible portrays him. So you have Joseph as a Samarian becoming the ruler of Egypt, right?
Right.
And so I think that but certainly for the Yahwists, knowing that a Yahwist now is ruler of Egypt is a big deal, and that's something that would, pass from generation to generation, saying, well, that we had a Yahwist at some point in time, we had a Yahwist as ruler of Egypt, and the Joseph story could have developed, based on this kernel of truth. 100 years later, 150 years later, who knows? But it could have developed from this, at some point later on. But I believe it makes sense for this to be a candidate for the historical kernel behind the Joseph story.
Absolutely.
In any event, even without this, just the career of Hananiah is absolutely striking. I mean, again, a person born in Samaria, educated in Susa, probably again as an aristocrat, and then becoming satrap for a short period of time, because again he could not quell this rebellion. I mean, this rebellion was successful. They drove out the Persians, at least for a while, for a number of decades. The Persians did reconquer Egypt later on, for a very short period of time until Alexander. But this person became satrap, and immediately had to deal with the rebellion. It was unsuccessful. We know that Al-Sham probably returned to Egypt in around 407, again probably to help with the rebellion. Both of them failed. The rebellion was just too strong at that point in time, and so that changed. But just the career of this person being born there, being educated in Susa, becoming satrap, having to deal with this, and then being demoted back to becoming a governor of Samaria in the 4th century. Just a tremendous story of a Yahwist becoming the governor of Egypt.
Wow.
I was trying to find the name of that scholar. I would love to get it to you. I'll probably have to get it after, so that you can check out what I'm talking about with the Ahikar stuff in Joseph.
Yep.
It really just adds more value to everything you're saying. It complements it at the very least.
Well, Ahikar had a tremendous. Ahikar also impacted a lot of Egyptian works as well.
They have the Ahikar translation in the James Charlesworth pseudepigrapha.
Nice.
Yeah, I highly recommend viewers become familiar with Ahikar. Ahikar has kind of two sections. A lot of it is just wisdom sayings, and also a story. Ahikar was found in Elephantine. We did find that they did have a manuscript at Elephantine of Ahikar. They didn't have the Bible.
Right? Isn't that fascinating?
They had.
I think Charlesworth did the right thing for classifying it as pseudepigrapha, even though it's not really Judaism, but I think it still is part of the tradition. It's like a proto-Judean text that
Ahikar is not really Judean. I don't see it as necessarily. Ahikar was very popular amongst Yahwists.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
And the name Ahikar in Babylonia became very in the 6th century into the 5th century became very, especially the 5th century, became very popular.
So do you think would you, if you were James Charlesworth and you're putting together all the pseudepigrapha texts, would you put that in there as well, or no?
Yeah, because it's related. It is related. It's not necessarily, but it is related because it had an impact on the. So I don't have a problem with that. But what's really interesting is that the name Ahikar, at least it seems, it's not absolutely conclusive, but it seems to have been very popular amongst Yahwists in Babylonia. So they would name their children after a literary hero, Ahikar. But nowhere, as you know very well, are children named after a biblical hero.
Like Moses or Abraham.
Like Moses, for example, until well into the Hellenistic period.
And
even then, it's very rare, but nowhere.
And that's why it's so fascinating that Ahikar shows up in Elephantine, because it suggests that they are knowledgeable of previous literature.
Of course.
And so if there was a Bible, you would expect to find it. I know we talk about this all the time, and we're repeating ourselves, but the fact that Ahikar is there is like, okay, they're not totally blocked off from the previous people's literature. They can find
absolutely. They were not opposed to literature. Absolutely. I mean, they had also the Bisutun inscription, right? That's also literature. And they had that in Elephantine as well. And they had the Bapuesh legend as well. So they had at least 3 literary texts that we have found at Elephantine. And of course, there's a lot that we don't have that has not survived at Elephantine. But there's not even the slightest hint of any knowledge of the Bible. We talked about this extensively at Elephantine or anywhere before the Hellenistic period.
This right here, Joseph Ahikar and the Elephantine, the Joseph story is diaspora novella, the possible Egyptian background. Yeah, there's this, and then there's also an Academia Neely Shupak.
Right.
From an Egyptological perspective, and I just found this. So
yes, this has just come out. Yeah.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
If you want to dive in further.
I think she actually quotes me in that article.
Yours truly, huh?
She's great. She's a great scholar, and she actually, I mean, now she's emerita. She's retired, but her office is right across the corridor from mine at the University of Haifa. Well, anyway, so
can we? We talked about a lot of stuff. I wonder if we can just kind of sum up what is Israel based on what we talked about. Unless you weren't done. I don't know if you were done or not.
Well, I'm obviously. I mean, I could go on for hours.
Yeah, we can.
But dude, you are the man for that. Yeah. By the way, we did it in person. I was like, "Are you sure?" I felt bad. I was a little pissed. Neil went first, and I was like, "Neil's gonna get all his good energy. Neil's gonna get all the good questions."
But then I had the sounds. The construction sounds, so it didn't really work out too well.
And then Gad pops up. It's like, oh, well, so y'all. I'm like, okay, cool. He's on fire with me too. So
yeah,
okay. We do have super chats. Keep that in mind. Before we wrap up, I just want to.
That's why I'm saying maybe we can do a little tie it all together, answer the question, and then we'll do supers.
I think the main thing that I'd like to do to tie this all together is just to say that we tend to focus on Judea. I mean, for good reason, but from the perspective of biblical scholarship, we look too much at Judea. I think Samaria was certainly in the Persian period was more powerful, more connected to the central power structure in the empire, and more well educated than Judea was at the time. I think that Samaria's impact on Judeans and on even Judean literature and on the Bible is still under-researched. I think most scholars would agree that there was some kind of collaboration between northern authors and southern scholars, but I think that we tend to minimize the amount of northern impact on the composition of the Bible. We just talked about Deuteronomy earlier on, how everything is set in the north. Even the writing down of the Torah is set on stones, is set in the north. So it's set right facing Mount Gerizim, right? So I think that the northern Yahwists need to be given much more prominence in biblical studies and in general historical studies of that period in and around Yahwism than they are today. And I think many scholars would agree with me on that point, but we are still, there's a lot of open questions. We're still at the beginning of this. And yeah, still a lot of work to be done, but these are fascinating topics. Even Hananiah as a northerner just shows you how much authority the North had to have a Samarian become, by the will of the empire, become a satrap in Egypt. So so the Samaria or the Samaritans. Usually, we use the word Samaritans only after the schism between the Judeans and the Samarians. Before that, we used the term Samarian, not Samaritan with a T. So yeah, the Samarians need to be, I think, taken much more seriously.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, we have the first mention of Israel going back to the Merneptah Stele, 13th century BCE, right around there. And then it's kind of like we don't really know what there's not a lot of primary sources that talk about Israel until way later, but we can see in the archaeology there seems to be two major areas: Samaritans in the north, the Judeans in the south, but it's kind of a gray area, as in them being separated. They're kind of together by culture and language, and they're kind of all Judeans, but they're just different. They have different kingdoms going on in two different temples. Would that be safe to say?
As always in history, things are more complicated. So I guess you guys are both familiar with Kuntilet Arjud.
Yes, Kuntilet Arjud. Yeah.
And which is certainly has relationship with Samaria, but it is in Sinai. So it's to the south and to the west of Judea. Mm-hmm. But it is connected to the north, right? It's connected to the northern to Samaria itself. And so we have things that are a little bit more complicated because of this. But
look at Yahweh with his big member there.
Yeah, the bull and his Asherah. Yeah, absolutely.
Big D, Yahweh.
Only like a horse.
Anyway, what does it say on here?
Yeah, and
do you remember what it says?
The harp playing in the background.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's like the Orpheus.
Yep.
Yeah. Nice.
Like that. Very, very popular at the time, of course. But this is this has Samarian connections here.
It says it right here.
And by the way, I'd love to study this epigraphically, but no one knows exactly where these fragments are today. They're somewhere in Egypt. Anyway, so
wait. So how do we know what it looks like? Someone took a picture. Someone drew it.
Yeah. Someone took pictures. We had drawings, and but then after the peace accords with Egypt, Israel returned it to Egypt. So they're somewhere in Egypt, but no one knows exactly where.
Wow.
Anyway, so things are always more complicated. There are always exceptions to every rule. I mean, things are always. That's what I love about the field that I'm in. It's always there's always a wrinkle somewhere.
Look, your name's on it.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Says Gad.
That's right.
Oh, that's my last question to you. The tribes. So you see these maps of these 12 tribes of Israel.
Yeah.
Tribes Israel map. Let me just pull it up right now.
Locations.
Yeah, and so it seems like I think it's from Judges where there's an allotment made. Right? Is it the Judges? I think it happens. Or
In Joshua.
Yeah. Is there any historical?
And of course, in the Pentateuch, of course, right?
Yeah. Is there any historical precedent for this ever happening in history?
Of what? Of
in the time of Judges, which would be like 900 BC or something like that, or before that?
No, it's before that. If the biblical chronology
900, right?
Then we're talking about about the 11th century.
Yeah. So with this, is this really what we're looking at? From reading Israel Finkelstein, I think the answer is no. But what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Israel Finkelstein on this.
Yeah.
And also, we talked about the Greek sources, if you remember, and the Greek sources have Moses dividing the people into 12 tribes, right? And so not Moses dividing them into 12 tribes, not sons of Jacob, right? But Moses doing this. So there was clearly in the late 4th into the 3rd century, before the Common Era, there was already a tradition about 12 tribes of Israel. But again, 12 is a very typological number, there is no. The tribes are simply not recorded. Gad is recorded in the Mesha stele as well. In Mesha, he says that he has destroyed Gad. He's destroyed that.
That's what I'm saying, because I just saw.
What's interesting, by the way, what's very interesting, and I mentioned it in my talk yesterday, that people group Gad is called Esh Gad, or the man of Gad, meaning it's a people group. It's not a geographic location.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no Ish Israel in extra biblical sources. Okay, so that would correspond to the Lu Arame, so the Awilum Aram, the people group designation of Arameans that I mentioned earlier in our discussion today. So Gad is mentioned as a people group in the Mesha stele, but Israel is not.
But then you have also in the Kundalit Ajrad, mentions Gad. So is there
around the same time?
Is there some sort of area that's labeled as the area of Gad?
Gad is probably somewhere to the east of the Jordan River. There was a tribe or group of people known as Gad, but we don't have. I mean, the others we don't really have. And so I think there's a book out recently about the 12 tribes that really kind of argues that this I think it's actually called The Myth of the 12 Tribes or something like that. It's a serious book and really goes into detail into all of this, but simply there is no record of these tribes. I mean, Judah of course appears, but as a location, but we don't have Ephraim, we don't have Naphtali, we don't have Menashe, we don't have as tribes. None of this exists anywhere in the sources.
Okay, so it looks like what we got is we have two major kingdoms connected by culture and language, and every century is going to look different as what the layout is.
Yeah, pretty much. But also, we don't have any proof of a unified kingdom either, right?
That's why I said two. That's why I didn't say one.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's what reminded me to point that out to the listeners.
That's true. Yeah.
There is no unified kingdom
unless we get to the Maccabee period. That might be the only time.
Well, it's not really a unified. I mean, it's a completely different story there.
They conquer the Galilee and Edom.
Yeah, slowly conquering.
That's the first time that's Israel at its height.
And forced converting. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's it. That's your unified kingdom is Maccabee period. That's it.
Yep.
So, all right. That's it for me.
Look, I'm going to start us at the top, and we'll try to blast through some of these so you're not here all night. Yeah. Daniel Kyle, thank you for being a member and gifting 5 memberships to 5 people here at Myth Vision. We really appreciate that. Daniel, again, on the Gnostic Informant side, gifted 5 memberships. Man, thank you so much for helping both of us out. Thank you for being a member. American Culture. Super sticker by the Real Daddy Abe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave.
Daniel Kyle says, member for 11 months. He used his membership comment. Could it be possible that writings from one of the prophets or another popular teaching writing caused popular reform of the name of Yah?
Good question.
Who knows? I mean, we don't know what caused this grassroots reform. It was a grassroots reform. I think we don't have any reason to believe that one of the prophets was. I mean, there's simply no evidence for that at all. But at the same time, we really don't know what caused it. What we do know is that period of the end of the 7th century and into the 6th century was extremely unstable. It was the Babylonian Empire coming in and kicking out the Neo-Assyrian Empire and ultimately destroying the Neo-Assyrian Empire. 705 BCE, we have the big battle in Carchemish, where the Egyptians are defeated, and so a lot of instability, waves of exile by the Babylonians that culminated, of course, in 586. But before that, you had wave of exiles in the south, in Judea as well. So I think there was a period here where people kind of came together, understood that they have some kind of shared destiny, and unified their identity with a very simple manner by simply standardizing the theophoric element in their name.
Thank you so much.
That I think that's it. But what was the trigger, the historical trigger? I don't think there's any reason to believe that it was one of the prophets, but it could have been simply just the historical background. But who knows? Maybe we'll find at some point in time some other documents that will give us more information.
Thank you. Isaac Cespedes, if I said that properly, I get $100. If I didn't, then that's just what I usually do, is butcher names. Samaritans today pronounce reading the Torah today, Israel, as Yesharel. Yesharel.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
Thank you for
Didn't know
sharing.
that. Yeah. TWPB, thank you for the super chat. Gnosis goal.
Let's hit that Gnosis goal.
Hit it. Enduring
True
motifs. Sargon II annuls Yahu Bidi can also be translated as Elu Bidi. The Elu is a generic designation for any deity, nothing inherently to do with Yahweh.
So we talked about this. That we have El and Yahweh in that name, both with the Dingir identifier. So yeah, I agree. We have both of them, and we know that El and Yahweh were assimilated.
Yeah.
You guys talked about it a lot. So yeah,
but that is interesting how you find it in a Hittite king's name. He's already syncing the two
a
gods
Hittite
together.
king of an Aramean city.
Right. Before the Bible, he's already syncing El with Yahweh.
Yeah, but he's not from Israel, he's not from Judea. I mean, he's a Hittite from so Yahwism.
Yeah.
I mean, these are Yahwist. I mean, if you want to,
I really want to track down where Yahweh comes from. I'm so interested in this topic.
I mean, I think that the evidence points to the north. I mean, the evidence does point to.
It makes me wonder if those Ionians are coming from a common, like the Ionian god, which one of the.
You're jumping ahead. There's a super chat.
Yeah, but it becomes one of the names of Apollo, and then even maybe Dionysus as well. But Apollo more easily to prove that. I wonder if they're both going to a common ancestor at some point. Maybe.
Who knows? Thank you so much, Daniel Kyle. Thank you again for the super chat. The Hittites and the Phoenicians were in the same area. Is it possible that trading metalworks were involved in the spread of Yah? Chthonic metalwork from Yari area, Mesopotamia, spreading south.
So the Hittites and the Phoenicians, well, I mean, the Phoenicians were, depending on what time you're talking about, the Phoenicians were, of course, spreading across the Mediterranean. But the Hittites, I mean, they were, let's say, the neighbors. The Hittites and the Phoenicians were again, depending on what time period you're talking about, but they were neighbors. Trading of metal was everywhere. I mean, obviously, everyone needed metal, and they would trade with anyone who can provide metal, and so everyone traded metal with everyone.
Right.
So yeah, was that related to the spread of Yah? Who knows? I think there was some migration of Yahweh south. Again, it's also really interesting.
Exodus pushes Moses finding Yahweh in the Midianite territory.
Yeah.
So they might have knew something. I don't know. Just helping Daniel out. That's all.
Yeah, I don't think that the person knew anything much about the person writing that passage of Exodus knew much about the actual history. But behind this was, for theological reasons or whatever.
Yeah. But there was a well-known metallurgical site where they did mine right there near, there where Arabia meets the peninsula. The Midianites and stuff. So maybe there was still trade, and they used a geographic. I mean, kind of like what they found. Bob Cargill says cities that built the Bible, geographies that they kind of.
Yeah, the 5 Midianite cities were dug up, and the archaeology shows they had Aegean pottery.
Yes.
Yeah, not surprising. Yeah.
During the Bronze Age, which is kind of like, huh?
Yeah.
Cool stuff too.
Yeah, Aegean pottery was found across the entire, it was very
big deal.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Daniel. You the man. S7, thank you for the super chat. Connection between Yah in Egypt versus Yahweh of India. Is that how you say that? Yahweh?
Yeah.
in India.
I don't know. I never heard of Yahweh of India.
I haven't heard of Yahweh in India, but
Me neither.
there might
And
be
then
something.
that would be something to call our buddy.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to look into that. That's interesting.
Any connection to Kubera? Godfrey Higgins, Jehovah is related to Yakub. How are all related?
Okay, it's
a lot.
Okay, so I mean, the Yah in Egypt is really Yah. It's not Yah, and it means it's the moon god.
The moon.
So the Egyptian Yah is Yah, and that's not related to Yahweh. And I don't.
It's different spelling for the hieroglyphics. Remember, you and I talked about this.
Yeah.
So the Shashu Yahweh has a different spelling than the Yah. That's the moon. One, it's like Yah.
No. So he's not talking about the Shashu of Yahweh.
Right.
What he's talking about is the deity Yah in Egypt,
which is the moon god.
The moon god. But
that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the Yah
the
moon
Yahweh
god
of Shashu is written with a hey, not with a chai.
That's what I said. I said the Yah, the moon god Yah, has a different spelling than the Shashu Yahweh.
Correct.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's good. Now the Yahweh, the Shashu of Yahweh.
Yeah.
Of course, it's inconclusive, but if you just read that the inscription, the hieroglyphics in context, there's a list there of Shashu of different deities, including Anat and including Baal. So the Shashu of Yahweh, that can mean that this is a deity Yahweh. It's not conclusive. I can't guarantee that it actually does. And this would be earlier than Mednaptah. So and this would record a people group who is identified with Yahweh, if this is the case. But that's the Shashu of Yahweh of Yah. If this reading is to be trusted, Yah in Egypt is a different deity, the moon god. Yahweh of India, not familiar with that, so that would be interesting to learn more. Yoa related to Yakub. I don't see that, but yeah.
Thank you, S7. Daniel Kyle again. Dr. Gad, do you think that the Deuteronomist reform could have happened in Hellenistic times? Do you think that Josiah had an aniconist reform rather than finding the law? Or do you think he found Deuteronomy? I question the whole Josiah thing, but anyway.
As do I, as you know. I don't think that there was a reform in the time of Josiah. Not a Deuteronomistic reform, and it could have been. Again, that reform as such is not historical. Okay, it's an attempt to make this book, or to make an authoritative book seem ancient. Okay. And so in this literary trope, as it is in the case of Josiah, a literary trope of, we found this old book and now it's going to change everything, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going to open it up and we're going to read it and we're going to get enlightened by it and it's going to now change everything. That's a very, very popular literary trope across the ancient Near East. And even the scroll from Qumran that I restored has exactly the same trope in it. So it was a very popular literary trope. It does not mean that this is historical. Now, this entire polemical position of, where should cultic practice be centralized, if at all centralized, that seems to me to be very, very late. There was no need to be. We know, of course, that Elephantine, had a temple. They had no problem. They wrote about their own temple to Jerusalem, not needing to even justify why they have another temple, right?
Yeah.
There were Yahwistic temples clearly in other places as well. So there was no actual cult centralization well into the Persian period. But remember, even in Heliopolis, we had the Onias as a priest from Jerusalem building a temple in Heliopolis in Egypt, right? So that's early 2nd century before the Common Era. So we have other temples being other Yahwistic temples being built without any acknowledgement of a cult centralization. Some scholars say, well, maybe it's cult Josean cult centralization was only effective for a while during the time of Josiah. There are different theories around this. I just think that there was no actual cult centralization. That's probably that's the Occam's razor approach.
Thank you. Daniel Kyle, again, thank you for the super chat. Do you think that Yahweh and Yah are the same deity as Dionysus, and that they switched to Kyrios as a way to distance themselves from the name, even going as far as saying Hashem instead of using Yah?
Again, very loaded questions. Thanks for these questions. Look, we know that Yahweh or the Yahwistic deity was assimilated with the Dionysus. We know that.
Yeah.
There are many records for that. And so were they the same deity? Well, in antiquity, that's the way people saw their deities, as the same deity by different names. And again, as I said, even in the letter of Aristeas, and even in the New Testament, they say, well, this deity that you call this, I call, you call it this deity X, I call it Y. And so assimilation was absolutely...
The Greeks said that Dionysus was born in some sources in that part of the world.
I know.
Homer,
that's right.
Homer puts Mount Nisa in between the Nile and Phoenicia.
Right.
That's Israel. And then you have another source that puts his birth in Beth Shean, Scythopolis.
Yeah.
So there's something going on with Yahweh coming from, or Dionysus and Yahweh coming from that part.
Right.
If I may, Gad, have you checked out Nisam Amzalog's work on this? Because he actually does an interesting, he wrote an interesting article actually trying to point out biblically the parallels with Dionysus and how odd they are. That he starts with metallurgy, as I mentioned earlier, to kind of show that there was travel and trade, and that the art of metallurgy, I think Mircea Eliade kind of talks about this a little bit as well. That is, you're like a mage or a very powerful, almost godlike human when you could do that. And the fact that you have narratives of Moses and Aaron, melting metal to craft a golden calf, and the golden or the bronze serpents and stuff has like metallurgical tendencies, and that Hephaestus is literally Dionysus's brother. There's so much stuff.
They both get depicted as riding donkeys.
Yeah,
it's very common for them. But I wanted to throw a wrench in here real quick, and because there's another god, or Apollo, who is very close to Dionysus, especially in the Thracian cults. Dionysus and Yahweh are like two coins of the same face. Anyways, and then in Delphi, the Apollo is on the top, and then he leaves for part of the year, and Dionysus comes from the bottom. Anyways,
yeah, it's all over. This is we should. But
I wanted to point something out with the name.
For me now, this would be the expected.
Yeah,
I am not. It's not only not surprising. This was the rule. Assimilation across the board. I think we mentioned in one of our previous episodes. We mentioned this truly striking coin of a Yahwist, who has his name, a clearly Yahwistic name, with the theophoric element Yahu in it on one side, and on the other side Zeus.
Yeah, but look at this. Yeah. Do you know what this is right here? Gad, you know what this is?
Yeah.
It's a digamma.
Yeah.
That's Yahweh. Right. So the etymology of the name of the Ionians is, and Beeks points this out. Beeks is the top of the line, Indo-Europeanist scholar, right. Greek scholar. He points out that the name of Yahweh, or the Ionians, Yahwones, it means devotees of Apollo. It's a theophoric name.
Yeah.
So there's this old name of Apollo called Yeyos. Now, the reason why I think this is interesting for this conversation is because when you look at going to your work with the Hittites, let me just pull this up real quick. Look at this map of the Hittite Empire. They stretch all the way to the Ionians.
Yeah.
Ionians would be right here. Miletos is an Ionian city. Yeah. So I'm wondering if the Ionians are adopting Yahweh from the Hittites in the same way that the Judeans are borrowing Yahweh from the Hittites. That to me makes a lot of sense.
But look at the legend there of this image that you're showing.
Right here?
Look at the periods. I mean, look at the time periods there.
Expansion, right. It says this color right here, they got it in the 13th.
But we're talking 13th century BCE, right? So that's a lot before the time that we're talking about.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe that point in time, that's when they start bringing over this Yah character to this part of the world.
Who knows? Who knows? That's
you never know, right?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's a little bit too speculative.
And then you have Ea, the god Ea.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, maybe that's the origins of all of these gods.
Yeah,
Ea.
but you know what?
There's been some scholarship on the name Ea and Yahweh being related.
There's a critical thing that predates this, though, that carries the Yah in it. And Giovanni Garbini in his book points out we got to look east, not northwest. And he says something about not the Arameans, but we have these tablets from like 2000 BCE. They're like second and third millennium tablets that have Yah in them. And so like
talk about the god Ea, right?
No.
I don't think so.
I don't think there's any Yahweh mentioned before.
It's not Yahweh.
No, it's not Yahweh. It's just this.
Okay.
Yeah, it's there though. The what you're looking at in the sound. The sound is already there. And Giovanni Garbini not only argues with Gad, saying he thinks it's northern, meaning it's already Canaanite. There's already a pantheon that seems to have him there, but that there's also 2000 to 2500 BCE tablets that carry that name, that sound, the phonetic sound that you're also pointing over here. So rather than going to the Ionians in the 13th century, you can go a whole another 1,000 years earlier and go east and find it. So
and then look at this right here. Some scholars identified Yah with Ea in the Canaanite religion. Right. And I looked, and I know this is Wikipedia, so it's like, who cares? But I've actually found some of these articles out there from some scholars who made this argument, and I don't know how strong it is.
Well, I mean, let me throw a wrench here. This is all to me personally, to my taste, it's a little too speculative, and I don't personally.
Yeah,
go
I know.
I go up to Yahweh.
I figured you were going too deep. Yeah.
But let me throw a wrench into this as well. As we said, in the north, the theophoric element was Yo, not Yah, and not Yahoo. Only in the south it was Yahoo and Yah. And now the Elephantine Yahwists, the main reason why I think many of them were Samarians is because they identify as Arameans. Now it would make sense for someone in the north to identify as an Aramean rather than someone from the south, right? Because they share a border. They share a border, and they share a lot of history together. And their material culture is almost identical. Okay. So in many ways, and in some places, as I show in my article, in some places the House of Omri is listed as part of the Aramean Federation of Tribes. I mean, the Arameans were a federation of tribes. It's not just there was no Aramean tribe. So so the northern Israelites were part of this Aramean world, as was Yaubidi, right? Yaubidi, king of Hamat, which is an Aramean city. And so we're talking about Yahweh starting, I think, somewhere in this Aramean sphere of influence, from which the Israelites inherited, and from that also the Judeans inherited from in turn. That's as far as I feel comfortable going.
No, that's interesting. I think
you are saying there's likely continuity. You just have no way to pin it down.
Exactly.
I'm fully aware.
Obviously, Yaubidi did not invent something new.
Yeah,
something happened, and clearly there was something before him, even far before him. But I think that that this is a northern phenomenon.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you for that super chat.
S. Mill, thank you for the super chat. Any idea what their first book or theosophical scroll to get significant circulation from the Hebrews?
So I think the question is, what is the first written work by the Hebrews that to get significant circulation.
Yeah.
Ahikar.
Ahikar I don't think was composed by the Jews, by the Hebrews.
Oh,
Ahikar was very popular among them, but it's not. That's
Right.
not.
It's an Aramaic, though, right? It's an Aramaic.
Yeah, but Aramaic was the language of the entire area. It's
Sure,
not Hebrew.
That's true.
So the first book to get significant circulation, I don't know.
Job, or maybe Job.
No. I don't think no. But it's. I mean, in terms of circulation, we're talking now post Alexandria, so we're talking somewhere in where, deep into the Hellenistic period. It was probably some part of the Pentateuch.
Because that's what Hecataeus is writing about, is Moses and Abraham.
That's what Hecataeus is writing about. That's what would appeal to Hellenistic tastes.
Genesis.
Genesis.
Makes sense. Thank you.
I don't know about Genesis, but some part of the Pentateuch. Yeah.
Thank you. Solera Knight, thank you for the super chat. Israel equals Israel, the three gods.
Oh, I know.
You've heard have you heard this?
Well, we've all heard this one.
Dude, I grew up. Yeah, man. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's not.
No. Dude, Neil, did we not go through like a phase like 10 years ago when we heard this?
Sounds interesting because it fits so perfectly.
Yeah.
But
Isis, Ra.
why Ra? Why not
I personally don't know of any name of an area or a people group or even a personal name that's composed of three gods.
Yeah.
Usually you have one deity and a verb or an adjective, but three deities
or a dyad like a not Yahoo.
Yeah, but three deities
would be pushing it.
I mean, again, you have. I mean, I can imagine maybe a triad referred to as such, kind of glued together, but not as a name of a people.
And then why? And then if that was the case, why hide it? Why change it to something else? If this was the case, if they're worshipers of Isis, Ra, and El, then we'd see it in the history. And why would they just stop doing it? And then
two of these deities are never explicitly connected with Israel in any way.
Yeah, but there is in Jerusalem, Salem, the god Salem is in the name of Jerusalem.
Right.
But of course we don't get a Bible, story about it, but Asherah's son, the moon and sun.
And I think Jericho has a moon god, Yaruk.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that kind of stuff, man. These are the kind of like deep dive documentary videos that me and Neil will like spin. And then Jerusalem. Okay. Next super chat. Dustin Ellerby here for the party. Welcome to the party.
Nice, Dustin.
Enduring motifs. Thanks for the super chat. Israel is always being used as an exonym and geopolitical term. First attestation, 9th century BCE. Simultaneously, Jezreel appears as an eponym, Jezreel city.
Interesting.
Yep.
Thank you. American culture. Yeah, seriously. Thank you for the super sticker. Richard Epler, thank you for the super chat. What about the Proto-Deuteronomy Shapira scrolls translated by Eden Dershowitz? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm firmly in the camp of scholars who say that this is a forgery.
Wow! Don't let our buddy know this. What's his
Ross Nichols.
Yeah, don't let Ross see this clip.
They think that he's looking for those scrolls right now, but even if he found them, though, you think they're forged?
Yeah, I would. I'm not going to mention names, but people in Berlin told me that the letters that are are kept in the archives from the scholars who actually met Shapira. I mean, they describe just how untrustworthy he is, and basically just that how they analyzed this forgery in real time at the time. So but that's just one parameter. I mean, this has all the hallmarks at least in my view. I'm always ready to be corrected on this as in anything else that I say, but in my view, this is a forgery.
Damn.
Thank you, Richard. American culture. I don't know what this says at all, but thank you.
Looks like Tibetan script.
Tibetan script. I have no clue. Thank you for the support of Gnostic Informants channel here.
Thank you. Oh, that's go back. That's what's it called? Not Sanskrit. Tibetan.
Yeah. He just said.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Y, I don't even know how to pronounce your name here. Based on your research, do you three believe Judaism was created as a psychological operation, or that it was formed authentically and later corrupted? Dude, the way that question even.
The latter.
Well, I mean, all religions.
Yeah, they all kind of form naturally from culture. And then people take hold of it, and then it becomes.
Well, I mean, let's just take a step back. I mean, Judaism. So we have Yahwism. We talked about Yahwism quite a bit. Judaism spawned off Yahwism.
Right.
And Yahwism, as you know, as I've said several times, continued unabated for several centuries later, until about
into Gnosticism. Yeah.
Not. I mean, Gnosticism was Christianity. Yeah. I mean, they're all related to Yahwism, and Yahwism as such, independently of Gnosticism and etc. and Samaritanism and all of that, continued unabated. But so Judaism was certainly not created as a psyops, but Judaism was as I already talked about several times, was a product of basically the spirit of Alexandria, creating an authoritative text and an authoritative set of laws that need to be followed.
You sound like Gamerkin right now, in the spirit of Alexandria. Yeah. I agree.
But so this was created again not as a psychological operation, not with any
national identity.
Not even the national identity necessarily, but as an adoption of the spirit of Alexandria by Yahwists, ultimately evolving into becoming that, separating and kind of spawning off from Yahwism into becoming its own thing. But it's not really an identity, because it became later on when the books became authoritative, then I'm using the word canonized, even though it's completely anachronistic here, but I want to say that something that kind of has a seal of approval on it, that became a factor in the development of the Jewish sects later on. So the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes, all of that later on became a political position. So again, it's not really a question of corruption. It's certainly not a question of psyops. It's authentic, but it's based on it derives from the spirit of Alexandria, and this obsession with an authoritative text. That's what gave rise to Judaism, and so it's in that sense it is organic.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Thanks for being a member, my friend. I really appreciate you. Constellation Pegasus, good to see you here, man. Can Gad go to Bart Ehrman's BCA Academy and make a course about this? I feel jealous. I'm like, why not MVP dash courses? I mean, come on. We do courses too. But yeah, have you thought about possibly wanting to do a course with us? Gad?
Why not? Sure. Why not?
Yeah, let's make it happen.
Idea. Great idea.
Let's do it. Doc Ploromanot, thank you for being a member in the big super chat. If Yahweh in Contillida Druid of Samaria, Temen, reflects a pre-Israelite theonym, did the shift to Yahweh mark Canaanite vowel assimilation or a scribal strategy to mask Midianite, Kenite cultic origins?
Good question. Also very low.
Midianite is the origin for this, right? So I guess he's saying if we're presupposing that, right?
I guess so. I mean, I think that so in Contillida Druid, of course, we do have Yahweh. Mm-hmm. And I think that Yahweh, I mean, we have it earlier on also. We have Yahweh also in the 9th century inscriptions, 8th century inscriptions as well. And so I think Yahweh and Yahu were also very, very, very popular, very common names as well. I don't think it's a I'm having a problem here with the term pre-Israelite theonym. I don't know what pre-Israelite means because, again, we have Israel in Mir Neptah already in 13th century. So I don't know about that. But there is no... Yahweh was always an option. I mean, the name Yahweh was always an option as a theonym. It was not... There was no shift to that at a later stage. So I'm not sure. I'm not understanding the question completely.
I imagine in this question, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Pleroma, is that there's this shift from El in Canaanite to a transition to Yahweh. So the typical standard view I understand scholars should take is that Yahweh comes from the south. El is authentically, that's his hometown, but Yahweh is a foreign deity who interjects and somehow takes over. I imagine that's in the mind of what Doc's saying. Correct me if I'm wrong if you're in the chat, Doc.
One more thing to say also is that Yahweh was clearly a...
You said correct, Nil, earlier, for whatever Nil said before you started talking about it. I don't know.
Oh, I was saying if this is truly a Midianite religion, and then he's saying, would this be what's going on here? Where
I just don't see any extra biblical evidence at all for this to being a Midianite. Okay.
He says it's asking whether the change from Yah to Yahweh was just a natural Canaanite vowel shift or a deliberate scribal move to hide Yahweh's non-Israelite Midianite Kenite origins.
Yes, I don't see any Midianite Kenite origins for Yahweh at all in the extra biblical record. So I don't know about that. I'm not sure about the change from Yahoo to Yahweh. Both existed in parallel. Yahoo simply because we're talking about names, personal names, it's just natural to have Yahoo in the name rather than the full Yahweh. Also, we don't know exactly how they were pronounced, and there were different dialects as well. So it could be that Yahweh was simply pronounced Yahoo, and the final hey was silent as well.
Gotcha.
So there are too many open questions on this, but I don't see anything that needed to be hidden by the scribes.
Thank you, GD, for the super chat. Thank you. Would the Yahweh worshippers in Elephantine also have been more influenced by the Phoenicians compared to the Judeans?
Probably. Yeah. I mean, I don't.
Do we find Punic gods in Elephantine? I don't know if we find like Baal Shemain or any of those figures or Melkart. I don't know if we see those gods there. I think it's just
we kind of. I mean, again, there was a Phoenician community there in the area. And
okay. Are there gods there too?
Yeah,
there gods. Okay.
Yeah. So we have that. We know that there was a large Phoenician. There were large communities in Egypt at the time. In fact, this Ostan that I talked about earlier with Hananiah, the community that he was in was very heavily Phoenician as well. And the name, as Funkmore Cross suggested, is Phoenician as well. And the coins that we saw were Phoenician, right? The coins that were minted by Sanballat were Phoenician. So yeah, certainly the Samarians were much closer to Phoenician influence than Judeans.
Thank you so much. Warlight, thanks for the super chat. A possible etymology of Ea is the Semitic root. Was that hey something?
No, this is chet. This should be chet if it means to live.
Yeah. To live. Okay. Similar to the Hebrew verb heya or heya, to be, which is a derivative origin for Yahweh.
No. No, I mean the root. I know he's writing, he or she is writing this in as an HYY, but this is a chet YY, to live.
There is a scholar from, what year is this? This is from 2018. Okay, not that old. And it actually titled "To Be or Not to Be." Yahweh and Ea.
Go ahead.
So there is some scholarship on this question that.
Clearly,
I would read this article. Maybe this will answer your question.
I mean, clearly, this is again going back to popular folk etymology. We have, going from Yahoo to the verb to be is very, very logical step, just from a perspective of folk etymology.
Yeah.
I have an article should come out later this year that talks about this as well.
It says, in this article, I propose that the Semitic concept of Yahweh deity, a deity's name whose form from this root, began in the East when Enki, the Samarian god of the subterranean waters, acquired the Semitic name Ea. So look, I'm just saying there's some scholars out there who's throwing this stuff around.
He is a trickster too. Genesis.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I have a whole book. I got a whole book about Ea over here. It's from what's his name? Walter, or I can't remember his name right now. But anyways,
but
I got a whole
that
book.
doesn't etymologically though, I guess is the point.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that super chat. The real daddy Abe, thanks for the super sticker. And then the mother frickin' Wendy Berg, love the name. Happy 2 months. Thank you for being here as a member. And I think she's been a member of yours too, Neil.
Oh yeah, Wendy Berg.
I think about the same time.
Yeah.
So we have literally ran through all of these supers. Gad, you're a champion, man. You've been here for so long, putting up
3
with
hours.
me and Neil. How do you put up with us?
I didn't mean to press that. Sorry.
What did you do that for?
I was looking for something, but I couldn't find it, and then I clicked that on accident.
It's all good, man. It's all good. Gad, wrap things up, if you will, on what you presented. Maybe I'd like to have people go to the links that are in our descriptions. They can get your book for free. They can download your academia page. Go follow him. Download any articles he has on there for free.
Yeah, I try to publish as much open access as possible. So a lot of these articles are open access, meaning that you can read them for free. You don't need to be subscribed to any journal or book or buy a book. You can buy the physical book if you want, and some people have opted for that, but that's not necessary. You can just download the PDF of this to read at your leisure. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Absolutely. Neil, what's up, man? We're at the end of the show,
This
bro.
is
What'd you think
said.
of that?
I got nothing to add. I think this has been a great show. Subscribe to my channel, and if you're watching on my channel, subscribe to MythVision. And then I have the links in the description for Gad's articles and all his books and his Wikipedia and his page, whatever it is. It's all in there. Yeah, academia page. So,
dude, I love this. I love how you think. It's pushing the boundaries. It's kind of stuff me and Neil like to do. We like to see what the scholars say and how they wrestle with each other. We'll probably do an episode at some point, and the scholar will say something. We'll be like, "Oh, but Gad Barnea disagreed with that," and so we like that. It's fun to wrestle with these ideas, and we thank you for your friendship and giving us your time, coming on here to educate the world. And we hope you'll come back and join me and Neil for future episodes.
Always a pleasure. Absolutely, guys.
Seriously, maybe eventually, I'm throwing this out there because me and Neil would like to put some tours together over there in that very region we keep talking about. Maybe we can link up with you in person if the stars align on a tour at one point when the world stops burning to the ground for a moment. I'm sure we all are ready for that. So when that happens, we hope you'll join us.
Absolutely, it'll be a pleasure. Yeah, I will be in DC in a month from now in Washington DC. I'm going to talk about Hananiah as well. So yeah,
I'm excited, man. Look, anything new comes out, hit me and Neil up. We want you on the show, and of course, there's also Jacob Berman. You join him too. We want to make noise for you, promote you, help you, get your ideas out there. So we really appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys. Absolutely.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Don't ever forget. We are MythVision, and you have just attained
true gnosis.
True gnosis.
Son, do you want to know what the truth is? After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill, and you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill, and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.